Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this week's Xbox Factor podcast. And I just want to apologize in advance. I am currently battling the flu. And of course, I sound horrendous, but I did not want to miss today's unbelievable show that I put together early in the week before I got really sick. And of course, this panel is not to be missed as well. Everyone here is loaded with talent as podcasters. And it would have killed me to miss today's show because and just a little bit of a programming update. There will not be a new Breakfast with Boone episode tomorrow. I am barely, and I mean really barely, holding it together for today's show. And to get up that early when I am on all kinds of medication, it just would have been. I don't want to do a show just to do a show. It has to have quality. It has to have substance. It has to have guests and topics that will get you excited as a viewer or listener. So we will revisit Breakfast with Boom the following week. I'm currently writing Monday evenings, primetime gaming. I'm in the midst of signing a deal with a big-time podcast that I have him on as a guest. So hopefully that does transpire. I'll know later on. And once that's the information has been confirmed, I will be making an announcement. But let's get into, of course, the ultra exciting episode of today's Xbox Factor podcast. And, again, you can't do these shows without having a stacked panel. And we have that lined up for you, and it's going to be amazing. So let's get into the guests that are here that are going to fill up your 2+ hours of the best Xbox content you can get midday on Thursday. And of course, I'm being very specific because in the afternoon, the Xbox 2 with Randall Thor and Jez Corden is fantastic. And I don't want to take any shine away from that amazing show. So let's get into the introductions. First of all, you know him as a regular panel member. He is someone that is, I like to consider, one of the community's finest. He goes out of his way to help others. He is, of course, not the bravest guy on the panel, and he has blatantly admit that because, obviously when Resident Evil 3 comes out, he is not playing that unless, of course, there's multiplayer. Please welcome Zemi Games.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Super excited to be here. These topics look absolutely fantastic. And, I look forward to doing this show every single Thursday. It's been, right on my calendar all week. And I'm just happy that you're feeling, I guess, good enough to do this show. I appreciate it. And I hope you get, better soon, Boom.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, it's just a matter of time. I already started taking antibiotics, so I should be good to go but hopefully by the end of the weekend. Next up, you know him as being someone that has Forza skills like nobody's business. He's coming to us today all the way from the West Coast, which some would consider the best coast. And he is a driving enthusiast who I needed to have on today's show. Please welcome Hyena Den.
Hey, everybody. Thanks again for giving me the opportunity to be on the show again, Boom. It's always really fun to be on here. There's a lot of very exciting topics that I told some of my friends about, and one in particular that I'm extremely excited to talk about because it's going to set a precedent for Xbox's first party for next generation. So
yes, and we'll be breaking that down because that's going to be interesting. And there's a lot to discuss because the ramifications of perfectly balanced ray tracing on Forza Motorsport 8 is obviously going to affect all of Microsoft's first-party games that will be using the technology like I said, what they're doing nowadays is one hand is washing the other, whereas in the past, they kind of seemed a closed wall kind of developmental mentality. And it seems, they've taken a page right out of Sony's book where, as we've seen in the past, and it's been very public about it, how if one company is struggling in a particular area, someone from Sony's first party studio goes over and assists to make sure that the game that's coming out is of the highest quality. And we're seeing that now with all of the Xbox studios, which we have a total of 15. So it's going to be a very interesting topic. But let me get into someone that is making his second appearance on the Xbox Factor podcast. Someone that wanted to make a return appearance, and that's very good for me because we love having people that are excited about the brand, but more importantly, he enjoyed himself so much the last time that he did, in fact, ask to have another go at it. And that makes me happy as a showrunner. Please welcome Stagrilla.
Hey, Boom. Thanks for having me back. Yeah, I really had a good time last time. I really enjoyed just talking about gaming and stuff. You know, it doesn't have to be Xbox specific, but I do love the Xbox, and I'm glad to be back. And I'm hoping you feel better soon and excited to be here with Zemi and Hyena. Is that correct?
Yes, Hyena. Yes.
I suck at names usually, so I'm glad I nailed that one. But yeah, let's just go ahead and get right into this, man. You got some great topics today, so.
No, thank you so much for being here. Do really appreciate it. But listen, you know what? Before we get started, obviously, if you've been following me for quite some time, and as of recently, you've enjoyed the level of production value to the newly added animated intros, borders, and channel membership emojis and badges. All of that work was done by the outstanding Graphic God. Not only is Graphic God a sponsor for Double Barrel Gaming, he is the owner of XboxGamerPicks.com. And obviously, his originally designed artwork shouldn't break your bank account. And not only is it user-friendly with pricing, but his artwork is second to none and someone that I highly endorse. Now, if you're looking for an animated avatar, a custom intro, an originally designed artwork for your YouTube channel, and if you're looking to stand out among the millions of people on the interwebs, look no further than XboxGamerPicks.com. All of the links have been made available in the show notes below, and you can just tell them that Boom sent you. So let's get into, obviously, the breaking news. Yesterday, the internet was shockwaves was basically sent through the interwebs. And this affected the entire industry. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about one of the originally founded fathers, this gentleman right here, who I had the pleasure of meeting at last year's Fan Fest. Rod Ferguson has officially announced that he is leaving the coalition to take a position in working with Blizzard Entertainment, where Mike Ybarra, an Xbox employee, has now taken over as VP, and this is this is a big loss. Now, I mean, we're going to be breaking down, and we're going to get everybody's opinion on how big of a loss, and should this actually affect development of Gears 6. But I am going to say this: him leaving the coalition is on the same level of like a Neil Druckmann leaving The Last of Us 2 studio in Naughty Dog. I believe that both of these studio heads have such an impact in the community at hand that it's going to be, there's going to be people that, again, we're going to talk about it, that are going to suggest that, you know what, Boom, their company is already grounded. He's been doing this for 15 years. And, they have plans for Gears Tactics and Gears 6 and probably Gears 6, 7, and 8. But we're going to break that down in a second. I want to read the 2 Twitter announcements that, of course, sent those shockwaves and had a lot of people with their mouths hitting the floor. This is what he had to say on Twitter. I began working on Gears of War 15 years ago, and since then, it has been the joy of my life. But now it's time for a new adventure. I leave Gears in the great hands of the Coalition and can't wait for everyone to play Gears Tactics on April 28th. He continues with, starting in March, I will join Blizzard to oversee the Diablo franchise. Leaving is bittersweet, as I love our Gears family, the fans, and everyone at the Coalition and Xbox. Thank you. It has been an honor and a privilege to work with all of you. Now, here's was Phil Spencer's response to this. And of course, good guy Phil, I'm sure that they're very good friends, and this is going to be a big loss. This is what Phil had to say. Thank you at Gears Viking for the passion and effort you've brought to the Gears and Xbox and the work that you've done to build the world-class team at the Coalition. Best of luck in your next journey. Now, obviously, this is the second huge company shakeup to hit the interwebs this week. First, it was announced that Dan Houser, one of the founders of Rockstar Games, has been on an extended vacation since April of 2019. Some are suggesting that their parent company, 2K Games, wants a more consistent flow of Rockstar-produced titles. The question is this the reason why he left? And of course, we have to bring this right back to, of course, the Gears franchise and Rod Ferguson. Now, this particular loss for Rockstar is something that we're going to be covering in full detail on Monday evening's Primetime Gaming. Though today, we are going to break down what this means for the Gears franchise moving forward. And I also wanted to discuss why Rod Ferguson left his dream job. Now, this question is, someone may say I'm walking on glass here. But is there something more nefarious going on here? Because obviously this was his dream job. He is the studio head. He makes all of the decisions. Or was it just simply, he's been doing this for 15 years. He's good friends with Mike Ybarra, and he loves working on the Diablo franchise, and he was given a golden opportunity. So let's get into the panel. Zemi Games, I want to go to you first on this, dude. Obviously, this was a big loss, and like I said, people within the industry have been very positive, and of course, they've been sending lots of warm and interesting, supportive, compliments and comments to Gears. Gears Viking, also known as Rod Ferguson. For you personally, how big of a loss is this for Microsoft, but more importantly, the Gears franchise?
I mean, he was one of like the main starting dudes. I mean, he's been, making Gears games for so long, and he is the studio head. So I think if anyone is sitting here saying that it's not, a decently sized loss for Microsoft or for Xbox or for the Coalition, I think that they might be playing themselves a little bit. I'm not saying it's going to be doom and gloom, and there's no way that the Coalition's ever going to be able to make another Gears of War game. Of course, that's not true, right? But I do think it is a loss. Because he was such an influential person to the franchise and to the game. But ultimately, I'm happy for him the same way I'm, happy for Mike Ybarra for, leaving his position at Xbox and going to Blizzard Activision. I can't really, imagine. I'm still a young guy, right? So I can't really imagine being at a company for 15 years doing the same thing over and over and over again. And, I think eventually it might wear you down. You might want to go and try something new. The Diablo franchise is an absolutely huge franchise that a lot of people, a lot of gamers absolutely fell in love with the first iteration, with the second iteration, and even a lot of people enjoyed the third game. And I'm sure that Rod Ferguson was a fan of the Diablo series. So, to go and work on the next game might be a bucket list kind of thing. It might be a dream come true. Then again, you might have some other people, across the aisle that are, screaming once again, doom and gloom, something, as you say, nefarious is going on. I mean, and that could possibly be it as well. That could, be a reason why Mike Ybarra left. It could be a reason why now Rod Ferguson left. But as far as that goes, as far as what bad thing could be happening at Xbox to cause this, which I don't really think is really the case, we would have no idea of that ever even happening. That's like something that you would hear about, a couple of years later, 5 years later, in an article, where people finally come out. So, if anything nefarious is going on, I don't think that we'll, hear about it for probably years, from now. But I don't really think that that's the case. I think he just wanted to go try something new, and I'm happy for him. There was another tweet that came out that, it has, I think, a lot of Gears of War enthusiasts really excited, and that's, Cliffy B.
Yes.
Coming out saying, hey, I still have some of my old ideas back. And, I would be lying if I said that I didn't enjoy Gears of War more whenever Cliffy B was there than whenever he wasn't,
Okay.
I love Gears of War 1, Gears of War 2, Gears of War 3. Those are my probably all-time favorite Gears of War games, especially the first one. The first one's absolutely fantastic. It's probably still my favorite. I guess this topic kind of has like a little side topic of whether or not Cliffy B would be possibly come back, and if he did, and what what scale would he come back, if Microsoft would even want him back. And that really has me excited too, because I would love to see him come back to the franchise, maybe not as a studio head, but maybe as a producer, maybe as a designer in some front. I would love to see Cliffy B come back and possibly bring some of his ideas to the franchise.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to read Cliffy B's response, and this is directly from his official Twitter account. He says this: offer still stands to consult on the Gears franchise, Microsoft. And after that, it says your move. And after that, it says Rod had a bunch of my and Mr. Lee Perry's unused ideas sitting on the cutting room floor. And that's, listen, regardless of whether or not you appreciate Cliffy B, I'm going to say this about the man. He has been gaming for over 20 years. He's been a designer probably for as much as that since he was a kid. Do I think he still has the chops to bring new ideas to the Gears franchise? You're damn right I do. I think that as big of a loss and as headline grabbing as this loss is for the Microsoft company that's on the cusp of a new console launch in 10 months, having Cliffy B come back in some form to help with turn the Gears franchise in a different direction could be one of those headlines that completely, again, Rod is an amazing man and he is going to do wonderful things wherever he is. And I told him on Twitter, you can look at my account. I said, I'm very happy that you're going to be doing new projects, though I will say I am very disappointed that he is not going to be a part of the Gears of War franchise anymore. And I wrote him another personal message. Now, I don't know him personally, but I am going to say this. I was given an opportunity to review Gears 5 for Microsoft and the Coalition. And my review was almost 12 minutes long. You can find it on my channel if you're interested to get the score and exactly what was said. But privately, and I don't mind saying this because it's something that has never happened to me since I started YouTube, he wrote to me and told me not only did he thank me for the glowing review, but he showed the team the review. And as a small YouTuber that doesn't even have 3,500 subs, that's a big effing deal. So, and again, on top of being able to meet him, speak with him for 5 minutes, I mean, we didn't talk about life, but we talked about Gears, and he took the time to shake my hand, sign an autograph on a poster that says Gears 5, and to talk about the game. And I'm always going to remember that. But I want to go to Stagrilla. Stagrilla, obviously, when anyone leaves in the position that he is a part of, he is the studio head. A lot of people will try to downplay this as not being an important move, or some people, and we know who they are, which they will not be mentioned on this damn show, will try and run a narrative that Microsoft is basically have kicked the bucket and they're dying. And this particular show, as everyone, we have nearly 200 people watching, and we're only 19 minutes in, which I honestly cannot thank everybody for being here. What is your personal thought on how big of a loss this is for Microsoft? And do you believe that they have the proper development chops in place to continue the Gears franchise that we all know and love?
Personally, it's a big deal-ish. It's always a big deal when a big studio head leaves. But on the same token, dude's going to chase a new challenge. He's done this for 15 years. He's really enjoyed it. He created a great product, a great team, and now he has, as an example, my wife worked for has worked for a big company online. She left after a certain amount of years because it was no longer challenging and they weren't progressing her in the company. She left for 2 years. They came back and got her again and gave her a higher position and more challenges. This could be a situation like that where dude's like, I've done all I can do here. I need to go challenge myself elsewhere. So I think that's what he's doing. He's done all he can do. I mean, not that he's bored, but maybe he's a little bit bored with the work. You know, he loves Gears, but at some point, if you do the same thing day in, day out, it does become, you get a little complacency probably. And this challenge to move over to a new company and reestablish Diablo is probably like one of those things where he looked at it like, huh, that's a fresh, not that the game's fresh and new, but this is a fresh new thing for me. And it's probably a game that he has enjoyed, like Ybarra, when he was like, you know, we all know that Ybarra is a huge Diablo guy.
Yes,
you know,
he
is. It's an
he's a big PC guy.
Yeah, and it's an opportunity for both of these guys to not only not get away from Microsoft, but to just get away from Microsoft and try something different. I mean, both of them had been under that umbrella for a really long time. And, you know, when you're under a certain company's umbrella, you have to follow their ethos and you have to kind of stick to the guideline. And we've all seen since Ybarra's left how much fun he is on Twitter and how much more open he is. And
it's like the chain was removed.
And I don't feel like there's anything nefarious going on. I truly view this as a personal decision to want to challenge yourself as something new. Now, on the subject of do I feel like he has left the coalition in a good place? Of course, I feel like he's left the coalition in a good place. I don't think Ybarra or Rod would have left their positions if they felt like them leaving would have been detrimental to their departments. I mean, they both feel like, to me, they're guys that take a lot of pride in their work, and they take a lot of pride in the fact that they're not going to leave things in shambles and run away. You know, like it would reflect on them poorly if they just were like, holy shit, this is really bad. I need to cut and tuck my tail and run away. I don't see it as that. I see it as that he wants a new challenge and he's got a great team around him. I mean, Gears 5, I haven't finished the campaign yet because backlog life. Every day I'm like, I need to get back into Gears, and I end up playing a new indie title, but that's besides the point. I feel like what I've played of the game has been amazing. I'm not a multiplayer guy. We can argue all day long about how the multiplayer has failed a lot of people. I think the campaign is great. I still need to finish it. That being said, I was going somewhere and I think I lost my train of thought.
Okay, we'll come back around to it.
No, but real quick, I found it again. I think that not only, you know, he wanted a new challenge, I think that the Gears after Tactics and, you know, they got the Gears Pop and Gears 5, it's going to be shelved for a little while. Cause I mean, it takes 2 to 5 years to make a really true epic AAA, and now this new quadruple A experience is out there. I feel like Gears is going to be shelved for a while. And I would really, really personally like to see that team work on something else.
I agree 100%.
I don't want to see a perfect Dark, because that's just, I'm not a remaster, I'm not a rehash or revisit kind of guy. I mean, granted, I love Halo and I love Gears, but I want to see teams challenge themselves. And I want to see not only teams challenge themselves, but I want new experiences and new mechanics and new worlds and just new things that challenge not only the creators of these games, but challenge us as gamers when we play them.
No, it's a great point. That's actually a really well thought out point, to be honest with you, dude. Because, I mean, listen, I'm not going to sit here and lie and even remotely suggest that I am not foaming at the mouth for a new realized Joanna Dark. But because I'm a big, you know, Sam Fisher, Splinter Cell kind of a guy, I think it's a genre that just has not been well represented in this generation. And I like Joanna Dark. I like Perfect Dark. I think there's a lot there. But I am in 100% agreement with you about, I think it's time for this studio to work on something else. And they are such a large studio that they could take on a Joanna Dark reboot of sorts, but also do something new, bring a new IP that we know that they can do. And again, I'm not saying that we should see something, you know, a first-person shooter of sorts, but because they have such, you know, prowess and chops when it comes to third person storytelling and gunplay, I think they could bring something really exciting and interesting to the coalition that's just that doesn't say Gears of War. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with the franchise, but with the release of Tactics on the 28th of April, that will now bring the total of since for 15 years, 7 titles, donning the Gears of War franchise. Now, granted, Tactics is extremely different, which I cannot wait for, but they still had a total of 6 Gears games, including, the one that no one really likes that I happen to really like, in Judgment. So I would love to see them take on something new, especially with the way that Microsoft is now. It seems as if, anyway, that they're taking chances and letting games just take as long as they need to take. But really great points. Hyena, I want to go to you next, dude, if that's okay. But before I do, I have to catch up with some of the super chats. I feel like I'm literally running the show in molasses, so I'm sorry if it takes me a minute, because I'm trying to catch up. There's been quite a few of them. First of all, Elemental PO drops a $10 super chat. And thank you so much for being here, but also thank you for the consistent generosity, my friend. That is very kind of you. He says, PSA, Gears will be in good hands with the coalition. Rod Ferguson reassuring fans that that Gears will live on for the better. Congrats to Rod on his move to Blizzard / Diablo. And you know what? I couldn't have said it any better, my friend. And then he drops an additional $5 super chat, and he says this: where's Sean Layden? At least we know why Rod left. He's a big fan of Diablo. He gets to maybe he says here he gets to be the head of the studio. Yeah, I don't Sean Layden, man. That guy's been 90Z, in the police terms, that's gone. Mr. Tushy drops a $2 super chat, and he says, shout out to Mrs. Boom for the Twitter chicken wings. Yeah, she really put her foot into that. She made the Super Bowl was delicious. Let's just say that. So thank you for the compliment, my friend. And of course, the super chat. And Spider-Man drops a $2 super chat. I mean, a $5 super chat. Thank you for that. He says this: I say this is a good thing. Getting new blood and leadership in the coalition can invigorate the Gears franchise and lead the series into a new direction. And that is an excellent, excellent point. And I agree 100%. But Hyena Dan, I really want to get your take on this, because when the studio head leaves, he obviously, like Stagrilla was saying, would not, because he's such a professional, he's such a paraprofessional, would leave the franchise in disarray. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I don't think Gears of War 5 was robbed for Game of the Year, because I'm going to say that. I think that if the game is a phenomenal romp for single player, I think that the multiplayer offers so many choices that if you are a Gears fan, like our very good friend Crispy Bomb, who's working and hopefully listening at the same time, he talks about it all the time. And again, if you are someone that loves multiplayer, the Gears of War franchise answers that call time and time again. But if, like Stagrilla, myself included, I'm more of a single player kind of a dude. So I, of course, enjoy the strong story, so much so that I'm playing through it a second time to do a particular ending that I won't spoil, because some people didn't beat it, and I'm going to make my choice on the right instead of the left this time around. But what is your thoughts, Hyena Den, on this massive and reeling departure from, of course, the Gears franchise?
Well, I know that there's a lot of people that respect what Rod Ferguson has done for the coalition over the years. You can split this down the middle and go about it 2 different ways, depending on the person's perspective on this. When it comes to the coalition and the Gears franchise, he's been there for, like you said, over 15 years now, and most people in the industry that get to that point, they start moving on to other things within their life. And obviously Dan Houser is one of those people too. But it's just one of those things in this industry that some people just want to move on to something brand new and have a change of pace. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think when it comes to Mike Ibarra, Rod Ferguson, who knows who else is up next to move over down there at a Blizzard. It's kind of, so when I first heard the story, I'm like, oh, Rod Ferguson's leaving. That's the headline that I saw on Twitter, and I didn't freak out about it or anything like that because I'm not, even though I have liked Gears, I'm not completely invested into that franchise. But I understood that it was a loss for a lot of people in this community, given what he's done over the last decade. But when I saw that headline, it didn't say anything else about where he was moving to or anything like that. I just saw Rod Ferguson leaves Xbox Game Studios in the Coalition. So I'm like, okay, that's weird because it's out of nowhere. But then I started reading the actual article and hearing it say that he's going over there with Mike Ibarra too. It's like, that seems like a very strange coincidence, and I don't want to I don't want to wear the tinfoil hat or anything like that. But it just seems a little strange that Mike Ibarra leaves to go over there, and now Rod Ferguson, and it makes you wonder if there's other people within Xbox Game Studios or higher up at Xbox or Microsoft, for that matter, that are being moved over to Blizzard as well. Whether it is or not is to be seen. I'm sure Rod Ferguson is going to love his job, and Mike Ibarra obviously likes his job as well. Like you guys have pointed out, ever since he's left and he's moved over to there, he's been a lot more vocal and active on Twitter, saying pretty much whatever he wants. But as far as the Gears franchise goes, I think when you look at most of Xbox Game Studios a lot of them have multiple teams doing multiple games, and I think this might set a precedent for the Coalition, and speaks volumes about it, where this might be pointing to the Gears franchise taking a break. And I'm not saying it's not going to be seen for the next 8-9 years, nothing like that, but I think they probably want to go into a different direction and maybe start up a brand new project. Maybe their next their next game is going to be a brand new IP, and then after that they can return to Gears. Because like I said, when you work on the same thing for so long, and I'm not saying Gears 5 is the same as 4 or 3 or 2 or 1, it's just the franchise as a whole. When you're working on the same franchise, some of that stuff can be tiring. So that's why you see a lot of people shift jobs and work on new IPs and all sorts of stuff. I do hope that that's the case with this, because I'd love to see the Coalition work on something brand new, like whatever before they were rebranded. I think it was E3 2013 where they showed off this sci-fi sort of like spy hunter sort of game, and teased it. It would be really nice to see the Coalition work on something new, because they are, I think, one of the most talented studios when it comes to utilizing Unreal Engine 4 above almost anybody out there in the industry. And I think it would be good if they worked on a new IP and then...
Me too. Yes.
Go back to the Gears franchise. Yeah, I'm not saying don't axe the Gears franchise, because obviously people love it, but it's definitely interesting.
I mean, look, the bottom line is this. The Gears franchise has a ton of stories to tell. Now, granted, depending on who you ask, a lot of people, including myself, would love more Marcus, right? Obviously, him, Dom, Coltrane, all the original cast. We know obviously Dom is not there anymore, but there are a lot of people that want maybe prequels that they could do. Obviously there's still a ton of story to tell regarding Kate. And again, we can't really talk about spoilers because there's some people that didn't, beat it. So we don't want to, ruin it for anyone, but there's some big consequences at the end regarding a personal choice that you are required to make as a gamer and as a fan of the series. And depending on which one of the choices you make, it is going to be interesting to see how the Coalition responds to the choice. and how big of a ramifications it's going to be in Gear 6. Though putting the franchise on ice, so to speak, is something that I think would be good for the franchise. Obviously, Gears 4, again, it's one of those titles. A lot of people thought that the Coalition played it safe. The Gears 5, I thought everything that I wanted in new Gears additions, they added. I want them to expand on the RPG element. Some people don't, but I do. I want a more open world map. I want more discovery. I want more traversing the environment. I want to learn about Sarah. I want to learn about the ins and outs. It has to be more than just burnt cars and crumbling buildings like we've seen for many years. So in retrospect of it all, like everyone was saying in the chat and everyone's been saying on this amazing panel, is that there is a chance that he has just done everything that he could possibly do in his 15-year stint, and now it's time to move on, and that's perfectly fine. And I think that the Coalition is going to be in good shape. Real quick, before we move on to the next topic, which is a bit of a smaller one, and it's one that was brought to us by the outstanding community member known as Obi-Wan FTW. I talk with him on a regular basis on through DM, and he dropped something that I found to be extremely interesting, but also something that no other show has brought up. So, of course, like we like to be the first one to talk about a particular topic. We're going to do that, but before I do, I have to thank Sovereign Cognito. I think it's Cogito. He says, well, first of all, he drops an outstanding and extremely generous $10 super chat. And he says this: if I were to compare the Coalition's craft with other devs, I would say Naughty Dog. Gears 5's graphics and character models are truly remarkable. Looking forward to the next game. And yes, I would 1000% back that statement, because I think that the Coalition is as talented as Naughty Dog. And I think that when you put them side by side, I think that Neil Druckmann, along with Rod Ferguson, both have those development chops to stand up with one another. And I think that both of them are fantastic. Mr. Tushy drops an additional $2 super chat. He says 240 watching, hit that like button. Yes, well, I would appreciate that if you would hit that like button. It would be greatly appreciated. So let me get on to the next topic. I'm going to change the banner real quick. And we'll close this one and take a look at this, folks. This is interesting. Now, I'm going to bring up a picture, something new that you've obviously seen in the channel. This was, again, brought to my attention by Obi-Wan FTW, who's a moderator on RDX, and a damn good one. And hopefully I'll be able to make him one, because he's someone that I trust and respect. He brought this to my attention just the other day. And this picture was tweeted by the awesome dude known as Aaron Greenberg. Now, a lot of people think Aaron Greenberg may or may not be pushing the envelope when it comes to advertising for or marketing per se when it comes to the Xbox brand. And even myself in the past have wished that they did a few more aggressive moves. And you've already started to see that with Mr. West, that was recently hired back from Netflix to run the Microsoft campaign for the next box that's coming out at the end of the year. Jared West is his name. He was responsible for the outstanding success of the 360 era, which saw significant success for the Xbox brand. But getting back to this, if you look at if you're not really looking for this, you may just pass it up. Now, obviously, it's a calendar. Simply says new month, new calendar. But right here, I'm going to bring this another picture in real close. See this picture right here? Now, this format where it says Asobo Studio with the line and, of course, the logo for the Xbox Game Studios is something that we have seen advertised with Microsoft when they're talking about their first-party developers. And, Zemi and I have talked about this particular subject in nauseum about how Asobo absolutely 1000% needs to become a first-party studio. And the reason why I say that is because some will bring up, and I believe it was Stagrilla earlier in the conversation before we went live, that they made Ratatouille on the GameCube. Okay, maybe not their most successful IP, but if you look at what they've done lately, they obviously released A Plague Tale, which, thanks to Zemi pushing the envelope on this, brought it to my attention, and it is probably one of the finest games that a good portion of this community have not played, that came out in 2019. It's currently in Xbox Game Pass, and I will say this right now, shame on you if you haven't downloaded it, because I understand that the backlog life is real. This is a game that needs your attention ASAP. It is a story that is told in a way that makes you really think about your choices. It is a story about a brother and a sister and a family that's destroyed during a very, very difficult time. And it is an amazing tale, no pun intended. But on top of that huge successful IP, they're working on a little title called Microsoft Flight Simulator, which is going to be a big game, not just for the Xbox, Xbox One, but of course for the PC. Now, if you look at this screen that I've just pulled up, all of the shots that I'm going to show throughout this particular topic are all taken directly from the game, and that's amazing. I mean, if you just look at it, the blue water, the pink flamingos, the plane, it looks like you could reach out and touch it. So I want to go to Zemi Games first on this. Obviously, he is the biggest fan of this company. He has been banging this A Plague Tale drum since he was able to review it. And I'm obviously, Zemi, feel the same as me that this would be an unbelievable addition, the 16th studio for Microsoft.
No, absolutely. Like, I mean, they need to acquire a Plague Tale, not a Plague Tale, Asobo Studios, like, as soon as possible. And I love that little thing that you said. You said, they're working on a little game. Like, the game is like 2 petabytes large. Like, it just, like, it blows my mind, the size and the pure scope of.
Well, I was being facetious for sure.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I mean, like, they are a fantastic studio. Of course, they probably worked on some questionable games back, in their college years, if you will. But now, in 2019, 2020, especially, with the release of A Plague Tale, with them working with what we know about, the flight simulator game, like, I think that they are a studio that is right up there with Ninja Theory, in my personal opinion. I think that that they're, in some ways a more talented studio than Ninja Theory's. That's probably from my personal bias, but it is what it is. As far as the calendar goes, I think it's a good point in the right direction. I don't know if it really 100% means that we will get a press release talking about how Asobo was acquired. I mean, it could just be, I guess, a calendar highlighting, Flight Simulator. Maybe they're going to, be releasing some more information about the game in February. God only knows what they're doing, but I really do think that it would be an excellent move from Xbox's perspective to acquire Asobo. I think that they are a studio that deserves to be acquired. If so long as they want to. It's kind of one of those weird things, right? We always talk about what studios we'd want, Microsoft to acquire, but we don't really know if that studio would even want to be acquired, right?
Right.
But if they did, I think that it would be, a dream studio for Xbox to have. And I would absolutely love to see A Plague Tale. They made that game with not the largest, studio, like not a ton of people. They made that game. It was absolutely fantastic. I'm foaming from the mouth for A Plague Tale 2, and just to imagine it being funded by, Xbox with all their money and all of their all of their talent would be absolutely mind-blowing. So I don't know how true the calendar is, if it's really pointing that Asobo's going to be announced as a Xbox Game Studio acquisition here recently or here soon, but I really definitely hope so, and I look forward to any news about Asobo.
I mean, listen, we understand that when Microsoft acquires these smaller companies, and you've seen that in the last 18 months, it has been pretty fun to be an Xbox gamer, especially because the potential for these studios to crank out AAA experiences with teams as small as 15 people is something that you don't see. And somehow or another, Microsoft is looking for these kinds of talent. And we've seen that with Ninja Theory. We've seen that with several of the smaller companies that they've purchased. I mean, I love what they're doing. And the reason why I love what they're doing is because it's not companies that are just big that are going to be doing dude bro shooters or FPS, romps. Every studio that they have acquired brings something to the something new to the platform, which is why Microsoft purchased a lot of these smaller companies that are going to be cranking out AAA experiences, but they're just not going to be AAA defined experiences by the so-called quote-unquote definition that the interwebs holds the title. I mean, depending on who you talk to. Some people say, well, just a second, Boom. You have to go with facts. And AAA development means X, Y, and Z. And I would argue that point because they don't have a team of 700 or they've spent 55 million making the game and the Z factor, does that really make it not a AAA experience? Because if that's the case, then I'm going to have to come out and say, I'm going to disagree 1000% with you, because if you look at some of these smaller games, perfect example, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about them later on in the show. Ninja Theory's Hellblade was done by 15 people, folks. Under 20 people made that game. Now, obviously, you'll see as we talk about it, they've doubled it. Whoa, they got 40 people working on the game. Holy shit. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. But we've seen what the potential looks like because we got a trailer, an in-game trailer. Now, whether or not you want to go to Digital Foundry and argue with me and say, just a second, Boom, that's not right. It was it's a cutscene. That's fine. But I'm entitled to my opinion, and of course, so are you. But Stagrilla, I want to go to you next on this because, I was being a little facetious about, saying that, this Flight Simulator, the little game that could. It's not quite a little game. They're doing things with this title that have never been done before. And it's probably going to be one of the biggest games ever released on the Xbox platform, but also it's probably going to be one of the biggest flight sims ever released. Now, I mean, if you look at this picture that I just put up, again, this is directly from the in-game engine running. I mean, I live in New York, and I can't say that I fly, so I don't know if that's exactly what it looks like from being that high up, but I can tell you that is unbelievable. If that is a depiction of New York or San Francisco, whatever town it is, it kind of looks like New York, but I could be wrong.
It looks like New York.
Stagrilla, what are your thoughts on the potential? And again, this is one of those topics that we're kind of all hanging out in speculation town. But because we have the evidence in front of us that shows, what Microsoft does normally when they talk about a studio that they've acquired and the font and the way it's written, we could play around with the fact that this could be something that was put out there, was a controlled leak. Are you excited to see a smaller studio like Asobo come to the Xbox Game Studios platform?
I mean, just by going to their website, you can see they have historically made more games for the Microsoft platform than they have any other platform. They do have cross-platform games as well, but they have made more exclusives for that platform. So we know, just based on that tidbit of information, they have a really good working relationship with Microsoft. Do they want to be acquired? I mean, who doesn't like a whole lot of cash thrown at them? But on the same sense, like, who doesn't like anonymity and being able to do what any direction you want to do? But as Microsoft Studios has said, we have acquired these studios and just basically bought them with a lot of money and said, here's even more money to chase what you want to do with almost unlimited resources. And not only that, you get to work with these other studios that you might have been blocked off from before because you guys were direct competition for game sales. Now you all work under the same umbrella, so you basically can just share ideas, technology, and game theory on what you're doing to make your game a little bit better, their game a little bit better. So, I mean, I feel like they're creating a really good work environment for developers in the sense of like, hey, all those things I just said, plus here's a lot of resources. I mean, resources really holds back development in games a lot of the time because you got to pay people to do the stuff you want to put in those games, you know? And Microsoft has a ton of money. We all know that. Like a ridiculous amount of money. I mean, they're $1 trillion company. There's other companies out there that can't say the same thing. Sure, you can make really, really good games, but you know, there's an extent to how much money you can spend to how much you're going to get back on that. Do I want to see Asobo come in? I mean, yes and no. Like, I'm a little bit on the fence of like having to have these studios be exclusive to either platform because I mean, I'm not a huge fan of exclusivity. I really would like more gamers to be able to play all the different games without having to spend $300 to $600 per platform to play, you know, whatever's on the PlayStation or whatever's on the Xbox. But I understand it drives competition and it makes everyone a little bit better. It wouldn't hurt to be acquired, but it might do them well to be anonymous. I don't know, man. It's the game specter is changing too. Like what people can do, what people want to do, where we're going to play games, all of that's changing. And it might actually make more sense going forward to have more developers under umbrellas, you know, to give them unlimited resources basically. And I mean, and Microsoft is a company that can provide pretty much unlimited resources and take the loss for an IP that may not work. So
yeah, well, I mean, listen, I could say
I don't know if I hit what you wanted, but that's
no.
Listen,
dude. First of all, everyone's point is important. I ask you guys to come on the show because I value your opinion. Now, we may or may not agree on everything, and that's why this is a conversational podcast. Yeah. The whole point of coming onto these shows is to give your opinion, and if everyone was just like robots and said the same thing, it'd be boring as hell. So I definitely appreciate it, but I am going to say this. The groundwork that Phil Spencer has been laying in regards to offering smaller studios into the cusp of the Microsoft Studio brand, one of the factors, and you mentioned this in what you were talking about, is the fact that they are offering limitless amounts of money and whoever is in charge to power their dreams. You know, you want to make this game, you go crazy, you make the game. And they're not. And again, if we've heard this time and time again, where people have gone out of their way to say, you know what, that Microsoft, don't get acquired by them because you're going to be forced into making Gears, Halo, and Forza, and suck it. You know, that's not the case. We see. I mean, a perfect example is Ninja Theory, right? I mean, they're doing multiple projects, and they're doing one that's covering mental illness that has nothing to do with gaming. Now, you know, would Sony or Nintendo allow a first-party developer to split, you know, 10, 15, 20, 30 people out of this team to go work on a passion project that's important to them as people? No, probably not. But Microsoft, being the inclusive company that they are, is saying, yes, you have a passion project. You want to make Bleeding Edge with 9 people? Go freaking crazy. Go make this game. If you want to double your team size for Hellblade 2 because you want to tell a different, a more thought out and well-rounded story, not a problem. Go crazy. Hire those additional 20 people, and that's what you have to love. I mean, the company that makes We Happy Few, right? Everyone is discounting this company. We talked about this on I believe it was Zemi last week's show.
I think so.
Yeah, and no one is talking about this company. No one's talking about this developer because they made We Happy Few, and maybe it didn't hit with a lot of people. I'll be the first one to admit it didn't hit with me. It's not what I wanted, but they're working on something that's AAA related. That's going to be a cross between the Uncharted series and BioShock. And you know what that says to me? Holy shit! Sign me up right now. So these are the kinds of games that are going to be coming in the next couple of years. And getting a Sobo who can tell a gripping, incredible story like they did with A Plague Tale, and have them put out what is apparently going to be one of the biggest flight sims in the history of the franchise is extremely telling. Hyena Den, I want to go to you because obviously from this topic we're going to go into why you actually are here, and that's to talk about Forza. But when you see screenshots like which I have up on the screen, and we're gonna bring up the one of New York. I believe this is New York. That is unbelievable what we're seeing. And again, who's to say that this company isn't tasked to bring back something like Project Gotham Racing? You know, I don't know if they own the IP, but you know, people have been calling for that for a return of that franchise for years. So you don't think Microsoft has enough money to say, "Hey, Asobo, we just acquired Project Gotham, and we want you to go crazy and challenge yourselves to basically push the other racing studios to their limits. Go crazy with this IP." I'm not saying it's going to happen. I haven't heard anything, but damn, wouldn't that be awesome? So my question to you is, if this is true, and again, we're hanging out in speculation town right now. If this is true, is this a big pickup for the Microsoft Game Studios?
Okay, so quick slight tangent actually. As far as Project Gotham Racing is concerned, Microsoft does own the IP of that. Bizarre Creations,
good. Okay, great.
Yeah, Bizarre Creations was the studio based in the UK that made that game up to its 4th installment before they obviously axed the entire studio. But they do have the IP, so if there was a studio that could do it, Sobo's kind of one of them. And so going into that topic, actually, I made a video almost a year ago. It's like 11 months or so back, talking about some of the studios that would be very pleased with seeing a part of the Xbox Game Studios umbrella, and Asobo Studio was one of those.
That was a fantastic video. You know, I'll add it into the show notes. That was very well done.
Yeah, it's actually it's my one and only video that's crossed over 1,000 views. But
Nice.
so Asobo Studio, the reason why I've speculated for the longest time that they'd be a part of Xbox Game Studios, and why I would be really excited by that, is I've always attributed Asobo Studios to what could be Microsoft's Bluepoint Games. And the reason why I say that is, like Stag has pointed out, Asobo is a great support studio, and they've been a support studio for Microsoft for a very, very long time. They have cooperated with Microsoft on games throughout this entire generation, from Zoo Tycoon to Quantum Break to Recore, to a lot of other games. They have had a long-running relationship with Microsoft, and Microsoft Simulator, or Microsoft Flying Simulator, is it's just another extension of that relationship that Asobo and Microsoft have had for a very long time. And you look at what they're doing in Microsoft. It's staggering, the level of granularity and detail coming from this game. Like they've said, it's like this game has like 2,000 petabytes of data in the cloud and all sorts of crazy stuff. And
It's ridiculous.
You're looking at pictures of from New York City to Long Beach to Houston to all Egypt, Cairo, all over the world. And the level of detail from this game is, when I saw it in at E3 last year for the first time, I don't know. I told myself, I don't know what this game is, but it has to be the best looking game I have ever seen, period. And once that trailer was over, I had to rush out and show my dad. I had to show my grandfather. I had to show everybody this game. I'm like, you will not believe this thing. You will not believe how this looks. And NVIDIA on Twitter posted, maybe 2 months ago, I think Tim Dog retweeted this, a clip from Flight Simulator, and I didn't even see that it was Flight Simulator at first. I thought it was a real, it was somebody flying a real plane, and then I saw NVIDIA retweeting it. I'm like, oh, this is just it's staggering how talented Asobu is with what they're being given to work with, and that speaks volumes when you think of their latest project that they just put out with Focus Home Interactive, A Plague Tale. That game on its own is absolutely gorgeous, and it's just that studio up in France is very, very talented, and I think they'd be a welcomed addition to Xbox Game Studios. Now, is this concrete evidence that that's going to happen? Who knows, right? I think Clobriel said on Twitter that it's really just an Xbox global publishing cooperation that they have still going on, like they've had with their previous games. But Asobo would definitely be welcomed by a lot of people in the community, and they'd be one of those studios again that would be on multiple projects. They would work on a brand new IP like they've done with A Plague Tale, and then work on something probably from the Microsoft Vault like they did with Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, look, I'll say this again, completely speculation on my part, but you yourself, as being a huge racing fan, can attest that the call for our Project Gotham Racing has been a drum that's been banged by many people in this community, and thanks to your unbelievable knowledge of them actually owning the IP, it excites me even more that this could very well happen, because we have heard rumors, and this is going back a couple of years ago, where Microsoft wanted a third racer in that fold to give the studios more time to work on the projects, right? We've heard that they wanted. So you're saying, wait a second, just a second, boom. What do you mean a third studio? This is outrageous. And based on what we've seen they're capable of doing, it could potentially be the rebirth of Project Gotham Racing. Now, again, this is complete speculation on my part, but it's one that's worth answering the call, because like Flight Simulator, who the hell thought that would come back?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And we don't know, even though they've already announced a Plague Tale 2, we don't know if that's been, a contract was signed for it, where it was the IP saw multiple, a contract was signed for multiple sequels. Now, Microsoft, being the big conglomerate company that they are, they can easily just buy those rights from whoever owns them, and you could potentially, like you're seeing with Hellblade 2, have a Plague Tale 2. Which just came, come out as an Xbox/PC exclusive, and again, this is speculative, but there may be something to this, simply because we just saw a Plague Tale going to Xbox Game Pass.
Right, so, and I don't want to cut you off, but
no, please, by all means.
To quickly talk about that, actually, with Hellblade 2, I'm not somebody that prescribes to the whole, Microsoft is forcing them to make, games as a service, microtransaction filled games for Game Pass. I do not subscribe to that whatsoever, because the examples that people are using with so Microsoft Flight Simulator is one of those games, because it's going to have microtransactions with how many different planes you can have and all that stuff. From Microsoft Flight Simulator to Grounded with Obsidian to this game and that game and Bleeding Edge. And it's like, for every game you point out that is a game with microtransactions in it, or isn't for that matter, or is it games as a service, you could point to that same studio and say, but guess what? They're working on other stuff too. And with Bleeding Edge as an example, you might not like that game with it being a multiplayer, a games as a service focus, but they're also making Hellblade 2.
Yes.
And so with Grounded as well, Grounded's probably going to have microtransactions, and it's going to be a survival games as a service. You might not like that game, but guess what? They're making the next their next RPG push that's going to be single player. So again, like I said before, I don't subscribe to that notion of all these games are going to be Game Pass fodder, microtransaction filled, whatever. For every game you can show me that has microtransactions in it, I can show you that same studio and say, guess what? They're making single player games too. So it is what it is.
Well, listen, everyone had amazing points, and again, that's what this is. This is a conversational podcast. We talk about our opinions. Everyone's opinion is valuable. The chat has been fantastic. We're sitting on the cusp of 300 people watching live, which is great. And obviously, I definitely super appreciate that. I will ask once again that if you are enjoying this, share it out on social media. Let other people know that there is another podcast as good as RDX, and of course the Xbox 2 podcast run by Dealer Gaming and Randall Thor, respectively, that pushes positivity, that goes and does the background work to make sure that I don't sound like a complete boob on here. But let me just change to the brand, because I'm going to bring up the next topic that we're going to be talking about. And obviously you're going to be smiling from ear to ear, because when I asked you whether or not you could be here, you were chomping at the bit to talk about this next story. And before I get to it, I have to thank Xbox Battlegrounds for the outstanding and extremely generous $5 super chat. He says, remember, guys, Game Pass changed everything. Microsoft needs to have as many companies as possible to deliver exclusive content for Game Pass. And that's a great point. And Drunken Ninja, hey, dude, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate that. And he drops a $2 super chat, and he says, Asobo could be used as a means for help with graphics. Now, that's a very great point. But let's move on to this next topic. Now, obviously, the writing is right there. So you see, we're going to be talking about Forza Motorsport 8 that has not officially been announced. We know that they're working on it, but we have some new and exciting information regarding Forza Motorsport 8, which is the next in the series, and how ray tracing is going to be a part of the next generation. And this comes way of segmentnext.com. And according to them, big changes are coming to the world's best racing franchise. Now, according to an announcement from Turn 10 Studios, and this is where we get into the official part of it, Forza Motorsport 8, even though we have not seen anything, and really that was my point on the opening, is going to feature ray tracing, and it's going to be a part in a big way. And they're going to be talking about this at the Game Developers Conference that's coming up rather soon, likely meaning the game will be pulling out all of the stops for the Xbox Series X and the Forza Motorsport 8 title itself. The potential that ray tracing has with the Forza franchise will be a part of the subject matter for the conference at GDC 2020. Now, how Turn 10 structures itself is going to be interesting on how they show off the ray tracing. But you know something? As amazing as it's going to be, first of all, we have to talk about how big the franchise is. And we're talking about both. We're not just talking about Forza Motorsport. We're talking about Forza Horizon. These two are by far the greatest racing franchises that are currently available. Now, you can argue with me all day long and say, well, just a second, boom, Gran Turismo, don't forget about The Godfather. Well, this is a world, and this is an industry that lives and breathes about what have you done for me lately. And to say that Gran Turismo as a franchise has not let down its fans, I think you would be lying to yourself. Because the one that was on the PlayStation 4 launched with a very low list of cars, and it's not what people expect from that franchise, and they haven't had a real winner in years. But what's very interesting is how the ray tracing is going to be used not only in Forza Motorsport 8, but all of the Xbox first-party games moving forward. Now, one of these new ideologies that has been discussed by Phil Spencer is how all the teams are now talking with each other. Now, if you remember, early on in this the show, I talked about that, about how this is a different Microsoft. This is a different team of developers all helping each other. Now, they may not be public with it, like Sony's, developing houses. They throw it out there for for publicity. Oh, this one is helping this one. This is going to great. Microsoft, on the other hand, has been kind of keeping it on the DL, and I kind of like that because you don't necessarily need to know who's helping to, who, but. What better franchise? And this is really the question that I'm gonna pose to the chat and, of course, my esteemed panel. What better franchise to exhibit the power of ray tracing in the next generation on the Xbox Series X, which, of course, has been confirmed as hardware ray tracing, than the Forza Motorsport series? Now, listen, regardless of whether or not you're one of these detractors that say, boom, it's the same old 3 games. It's Gears, Halo, and Forza. Can't they do better? And I say to you, well, you can say the same thing about a lot of the Sony franchises that have come out. Now, granted, they've had a lot of new bangers, which I hate that term, but Microsoft is coming with those new games and those new IPs. You just have to be patient. But in order to build an empire, you need high quality games that people love, and those 3 particular franchises are amazing. And you can actually, if you really want to be a ballsy MF, is add a 4th pillar and say that the team that develops Forza Horizon 4 or the Horizon series in itself is its own pillar, because Horizon is so much drastically different than Motorsport. But Hyena, I have to go to you first on this, because obviously you are our Forza resident professional, and you have been chomping at the bit to talk about this. So for you personally, there are 2 questions. One, how excited are you to know that ray tracing is going to play a big part in the next Forza Motorsport? But more importantly, how important is this for Microsoft's first parties moving forward? I think you're on mute there, Hyena Den.
Yes. So it's kind of a loaded question. So to take apart the
we'll take your time.
One,
this is the conversational podcast. Go crazy.
Ray tracing in the next Forza game is going to be, I think, for diehards like me that pick apart details from Forza, and I know people get upset at me when I do that, because I'm like, oh, something's wrong here, and something's wrong here. It's because I want to see them continually improve on themselves with each installment. Ray tracing is one of those things where it helps you appreciate the very granular details about any specific object. With cars, if you look at some of the stuff, some of the photographs that are posted on Forza's Twitter page, or Gran Turismo's Twitter page for that matter, a lot of these are beautiful, but you can tell they're still video games. And I think ray tracing is that bridge that can help push us closer to that weird, uncanny valley of, photorealism. And Forza is interesting in this aspect because they're utilizing DXR, direct ray tracing, DirectX ray tracing, I should say, in their game. It's baked into the Forza Tech engine. The Playground Games is also going to be utilizing it because Forza Tech is shared between the 2 studios. It's something I think people are going to be really surprised with once they unveil this game. The next Forza game as a whole is going to be, I think, like Dealer posted in his video, and everybody should definitely watch up because it is very informative. From both of the stuff that him and I have been hearing behind the scenes, the next Forza game has been sounding stranger and stranger to me by the second. And the person that I've been talking to you is completely disconnected from the person that Dealer's talking to. The person that I've been talking to for years now, it must be, they're the same person that told me Forza Motorsport 6 Apex was coming to PC. Same person that said when Project Scorpio was unveiled, I made a video about this over 3 years ago, when Project Scorpio was unveiled by not at E3, but they did the tech spec breakdown with Digital Foundry in it was like March or May, something like that. And they're talking about the specs, and they're showing off Forza Motorsport 6. It must have seemed like everybody that day thought that was actually Forza Motorsport 6. So I'm like, no, that's Forza 7. I don't care. Digital Foundry might have told you guys that was Forza 6 because they were under NDA. And if they had said anything, Microsoft would have been banging down their door. Yeah. And surely enough, 4 months later at E3, Forza Motorsport 7 was unveiled, and that was exactly what they showed off. So the person telling me all this stuff about the next Forza game, it's so crazy to think about because Turn 10 wants a change in the franchise, and nothing to the extent of, making it like The Crew or anything like that. But Turn 10 has been moving to get to this point for so long now with all of their hirings and all of their updates to their Forza tech engine to where they want to push the envelope to what people don't even think is possible when it comes to ray tracing, and they are big proponents of that. Like Digital Foundry constantly says, they are sticklers for 60 frames per second, and they have achieved it every single game, every single year for the last 14 years at this point. The only game that was in 60 frames in the Forza Motorsport franchise was the first game on the original Xbox. Everything else was 60 frames locked, and I think we're going to see Turn 10 push that envelope again, not just with 60 frames, but 120 frames per second, ray tracing, variable rate shading. Variable rate shading, I think, actually is going to be more important than ray tracing when it comes to the next Forza game, because it allows big uplifts in performance for things you wouldn't even necessarily see. The naked eye cannot distinguish what is 140, miles out in the distance, right? And variable rate shading when it comes to racing games. If you look at something like, for example, you're never going to see underneath your car unless you flip it over. So those scenarios where the underside of a car has to be shaded the way it's supposed to be, they don't have to, because you're never going to see it. Right. If you're outside of the cockpit view, variable rate shading can take advantage of that as well. If you're using a third-person camera and you're not in the cockpit view, you're never going to see inside the cockpit view. So you don't need that detail to be super granular. And all of this attributes to what I think is going to be the first showpiece that hits 120 frames per second. Maybe not at 4K, but 120 frames per second on the Xbox Series X.
But they'll be running at 60 FPS though, right? I mean, do you think that? Do you think that that's going to be across the board, or do you think that they immediately move to 120 on this?
That's actually interesting, because I mean.
Could they add an option if you're like, for instance, there's some people in the chat, and I'm not going to call anybody out because everyone's entitled to their opinion. Some people said, just a second, you have to be real careful about both Sony and Microsoft's next console doing ray tracing. But I have to say that if they're talking about it, if the team at Forza is talking about it, it's because they have crafted something incredible. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm expecting 120 frames. I know Dealer would love to see that. I know you would love to see that. But I would be happy with the ray tracing, and there's a lot of stuff that's going to help this ray tracing really push the envelope with all the different things that are coming to this new console. Remember, it's a whole different GPU and a CPU. And there's a virtual RAM that they're going to be using to its advantage. But do you think that they show off 120 frames at GDC?
I don't. See, again, that's a difficult question. I know that they're going to be talking about ray tracing and how that's going to showcase what their engine can do at GDC. But. So going back to your question about like where would there be multiple options? So my gut reaction was to say it seems kind of redundant to have a 60 FPS option if you can achieve 120 frames. But then thinking back on it, I guess it depends on what type of granularity you want when it comes to your settings. So if let's say that the 120 FPS is just a pure it's just a pure performance mode. Most of the stuff is turned down, not all the way, but they turn down some stuff to achieve 120 frames per second. You might have another mode where you get the full works of you could have some sort of balanced mode with the works of ray tracing and still have 60 frames per second and all that sort of stuff. So I guess it depends on how they see it. I don't know. I guess it really depends on the user experience and how Turn 10 actually goes about it. But the other thing I actually wanted to say on this, again, going back to Dealer's video, which people should definitely watch, is what Turn 10 is trying to do with the next Forza game. I think from first glance, when it comes to a lot of the Forza Motorsport diehards, I don't know. I saw the reaction to a lot of Forza guys that follow me on Dealer's post, and a lot of them were very like, oh, I don't know about that. The thing that I've been hearing is that the game is more open. Now, that could be taken so many different ways, right?
Yes,
and like I've said before,
the same thing.
Like I've said before, when I say open, I don't mean in the sense of the crew, and I hope the next Forza game doesn't turn into the crew, because I thought that was a very bad game. When I hear open, and you look at the teaser trailer for the Xbox Series X, where they showcased FIFA, Halo Infinite, and what is the next Forza game, that little 2, 3, 4 second segment, and I retweeted that on Twitter. I think that is very indicative of what the actual game is going to be. Open in the sense of they're messing with more environments that you probably would have never expected to be in a Forza Motorsport game in the first place. And a lot of these assets that they're sharing between Playground Games with Forza Horizon and Motorsport, that's how they're going to start achieving some of this stuff. You look at that teaser trailer, and you had the Koenigsegg Regera driving through what seems like somewhere out in South America, up in the mountains with rocks and gravel and all sorts of stuff. I think that those sort of environments you're going to see a lot more of in the next Motorsport game, because they're trying to achieve a more openness to what they envision Forza Motorsport actually is going to be for the foreseeable future. And if you look at what they talked about with the Forza monthly they held back in March or May of last year, and they're talking about new atmospheric settings that'll affect downforce and your engine and your gas output, to new suspension models. Why would you be making a brand new suspension model for your next game if you're not going to be utilizing it on surfaces that would take advantage of advanced suspension models? Like, you look at rock crawling vehicles like Jeeps or whatever, right? They have very intricate suspension models on them because of the terrain they're going around. And when I heard new suspension model for Forza Motorsport, or for the next Forza game, I should say, the first thing I said was, oh yeah, we're getting mixed terrain in this next game. And I think it all just goes back to that same teaser trailer for the Xbox Series X, where they're trying to incorporate new environments in the game that nobody would probably think of, because they've never been in previous Forza games to begin with, besides Horizon, because that's open world, but that's different. Right. So I think ray tracing, variable rate shading, brand new environments, a new suspension system, the whole works for this. They took a year off for this reason and this reason alone. They're trying to make something so radically different from the last Forza games. I think it's truly going to blow people's minds, and it'll finally be the first Forza Motorsport game that's in Game Pass, because the Horizon's already there, and that's good and all. But I want Motorsport to be in Game Pass.
You want a nice new Motorsport in there. Get that new car smell.
Exactly. I'm waiting for it, and I'm going to be very excited to play this once it comes out on the Xbox Series X, because it's going to be amazing. And I know that was a very long-winded answer of me.
No, absolutely. Listen, dude, no one has a time limit. You are our Forza professional, and hearing everything that you talked about is everyone. I think in the chat would agree. It's delightful to know, because there's some stuff there that I didn't even know about, and hearing your professional opinion on it, it brings knowledge and intrigue to the show, and I definitely super appreciate that. So thank you for.
And the last thing I actually wanted to say on this, about going back to the Xbox Game Studios and how they will utilize it. Well, just like Sony Studios, Microsoft Studios share a lot of tech between each other. And I've already pointed out the comparisons with Playground Games and Turn 10 with Forza Tech, to some of the studios really utilizing Unreal Engine 4 from the Coalition and what would seemingly probably be Compulsion Games, because they're both obviously based out in up in Canada. I think these studios are going to share a lot of boutique custom ray tracing technologies going forward across all of Xbox Game Studios. And like I've said before, and like Digital Foundry have pointed out in a lot of their Wolfenstein videos, variable rate shading is something people really should pay attention to when it comes to performance uplifts for your games moving forward, because it really, you look at when it comes to, DirectX 12 versus 11, a lot of that stuff is very minute. You're talking a percentile of your performance games when it comes to, and that's a game by game basis too. And you can throw Vulkan into that as well. API performance uplifts are very minute in nature, depending on game-by-game basis. But variable rate shading, you're seeing multipliers of what the difference was between DX11, DX12, Vulkan, and so on and so forth. Variable rate shading is going to be a very important tool for not just Microsoft, but Sony and other developers out there in the industry to achieve what they are saying is going to be the most immersive, performant console gaming experience going forward. And obviously that outside of consoles too, it's going to work wonders for PC as well. It's going to be very, very important. And I'm excited. I'm very excited.
I mean, listen, it's an exciting time to be a Microsoft fan. They have a lot of big games coming out for the launch, and they've set themselves up for people who are going to be returning and investing in their next platform, as well as welcoming others who might have left during the PS4/Xbox One shenanigans that went on early on. But Zemi Games, I want to get to you on this. Obviously, we don't have a lot of information on Forza Motorsport 8, but we do know that it's going to be a big game, and more than likely, I think it's safe to say without sounding like a lunatic that it's probably going to be a launch title. It makes sense. As a matter of fact, I've already called it on numerous shows that the trifecta pillar that holds up the Microsoft brand that people get tired of hearing about is going to be opening up the new Xbox Series X, and you're going to get a Halo. You're getting that with Halo Infinite, Forza Motorsport 8, and Gears Tactics, which I think is coming out for the PC on the 28th of April. And I think that they hold that, and I would hold it for release with the Xbox Series X in either October or November. But my question to you is this. Do you think that not only will the perfection of this by this team move over to some of their other bigger franchises, which obviously we talked about earlier, how one hand is washing the other, but do you think that this is going to be one of those games that are going to be shown off in all of its glory during the rumored Xbox Series S reveal event in April or May? Would you put this up there running on that Series X to say, hey, this is what you're getting next generation, jump on in?
As far as like when it will be shown, I don't really know. And I think it might be best for them to show it on the Series X and not necessarily the S. Especially with this huge leap in technology. You know, it's currently talked about how, you know, the Series X is going to have the power of a 2080. You know, I still to this day, like, I have a hard time accepting that, but, you know, I mean, if it's true, that it's mind blowing, right? And so I think, you know, with Forza, you know, adopting a lot of ray tracing and just the way that Forza has always been an absolutely, you know, drop dead gorgeous game, right? Graphically speaking, I think it would make a lot more sense for them to showcase that alongside the Xbox Series X rather than maybe just the S. And I would imagine that they would probably showcase the game in, you know, at E3 specifically. But, you know, I don't know, you know, Xbox is kind of crazy now. Like they announce consoles at, you know, the VGAs. So, you know, anything's really possible. Right. But as far as, you know, the ray tracing in Forza, I mean, it has me super excited. You know, like lighting and reflection is always a huge thing, you know, in games to make it look more realistic, to make the game more immersive. And, you know, I'm really, really excited to play this game because I like Forza Horizon, but I would be lying if I said I didn't like Forza Motorsports more. And I can't wait to, you know, just go in, start racing, and then I'm going to have to go into like the spectator mode after the end of the race to like look around at my car, see like all the reflections off like the side panel of the car that's like super high polished, like see all like the reflections. And another thing that also really kind of has me excited for like the ray tracing is the reflections in the mirrors whenever you're in the cockpit, whenever you're first person, you're seeing the steering wheel, you're driving the car. I you know, I don't always play like that. I usually play in third person, but every now and then I like to go in there and see the interior of the you know, Lamborghini I'll never be able to afford, right? And, you know, I look into the mirrors and stuff, and I cannot wait to see what exactly those reflections in that, you know, in the mirror look like, because they usually don't really look all that impressive to me, but I think ray tracing will go a very, very far way to improve that. But even more beyond ray tracing, because, you know, we all like these new, you know, like the new technology and the new stuff, but I think that the textures of the game are going to be absolutely mind-blowing, because, you know, like, we are taking a huge leap. If the rumors are true, we're taking a huge leap, you know, technologically, and we're going into, you know, what currently the high-end PC, you know, gamers are currently experiencing. So I think there's going to be, you know, a lot more detail on these cars, and you know, just beyond, you know, ray tracing, the amount of detail that's you know, going to be in these games is going to be absolutely fantastic. I know we're talking about Forza, but as you guys know, I love, you know, Cyberpunk. I cannot wait to play that game. That game got pushed back, and I cannot wait to see how ray tracing impacts that game, and how ray tracing also impacts other first party, you know, Xbox games like Halo, for instance. You know, maybe seeing like certain reflections in water and you know, like the lighting. And I mean, I'm really, really excited for all the new technology that's coming out. And I really, you know, I can't wait to, you know, finally be able to experience, you know, 4K at 60 frames on pretty much all the games with super high graphics, you know, like details and textures. I think we're all really in a big treat for this holiday season whenever these new consoles drop.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, this is one of those lookers, so to speak, that you would hang your hat on, right? You'd be like, yeah, this is what I mean. If take a look at just this picture that I brought up. I mean, this is from Forza Motorsport 7. Could you imagine what 8 is going to look like running on a new hardware? Yeah. Real quick, JD Gamer, who's a good friend of the channel. Thank you for being here, JD. Really appreciate it. He drops a $2 super chat. He says most people TV can't even do 4K 120. I'm getting a new one. Yeah, for me personally, I upgraded this year, and I wound up going with a QLED, a 65-inch top of the line Samsung, and I just wanted to get myself ready for the next generation. And I think a lot of people, more people than not, are you know, jumping into the next generation. But it's I guess like what you were saying, Zemi, it's gonna be a lot of fun for fans of the Xbox platform come this fall, whenever they release this. So Stagorilla, I want to go to you next on this, because obviously I don't know what your affiliation or you know, for the Forza Motorsport you know, franchise is, But knowing that we're going to get a Forza Motorsport 8 running on new hardware with the potential, again, this is just speculation town once again, at 120 frames per second, or even running, even using ray tracing to its, best ability on new console, new hardware, is going to be pretty interesting, especially considering how amazing this franchise has already looked. I can't understand how it would look better than what's already on the screen. What are your thoughts on the potential of ray tracing becoming a big part of Forza Motorsport 8? But more importantly, what is your opinion on them moving that tech forward to Microsoft's other big first-party games?
I mean, the other guys covered a lot of this really, really well. I'm a little bit out of my element. I'm the guy that takes Forza Motorsports and turns it into an arcade racer and just throws all the technical stuff out the window and runs into every wall. I'm more of a Horizon guy just because I like the fun factor. I do love the visual appeal of those games. I mean, it makes it so realistic. Ray tracing is going to even make it even more realistic looking, and just the attention to detail is going to be amazing. And I love that. And they've always kind of been that way. They've tried to push that, both the Motorsport and the Horizon, just the detail, the attention to detail and the attention to realism as far as they possibly could, given the technology they had at the time. And I think obviously with ray tracing, it's going to give it even more of all of that stuff. And going into other games for both platforms, it's going to be great. I mean, the Project Mara, the images they showed of that was just you couldn't tell which was real. I mean, you could, because they were like, this one's us in the picture.
Yeah, them sitting on the steps and them actually taking a picture of the steps.
They could have just not been in the picture. You know what I mean? It looked that freaking realistic. So I'm honestly really excited for the type of games that require high fidelity graphics for those games and stuff like that. I mean, as a lot of people know, I'm a huge fan of indie games, and I don't need those graphics to make me enjoy my game, but I do see their value. I do enjoy them, and I can't wait for more games to optimize those technologies and to make our TVs and the games look so much better. And it's almost like you can just reach in sometimes and touch those things. And it's that's really cool. But I also really appreciate the disconnect between what real life looks like and what I'm looking at on a screen sometimes. We all live in reality,
right?
And it's, I don't need part of the gaming for me. And I know it is for a lot of other people out there, is that disconnect of this is fantasy. This doesn't look real. And it's a total, it's a breakaway and an escapism in a way. But I also appreciate and respect and understand that I'm not going to be able to own a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or those, there's a lot of cars, there's hundreds of thousands of cars in these games that, I mean, we're never, ever going to be able to actually sit in and drive, touch, whatever. So that's great. I'm never going to be able to, chase or run from demons and ghosts that look fucking amazingly real, excuse me. But, it's awesome that I'm going to get those experiences while still getting, high fidelity graphic games alongside games that are just fantasy and fun. So,
no, I mean, listen, great points, dude. Really great points. I mean,
it's great that we're going to get everything.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that 100%. We as gamers are going to be very spoiled should you take the jump into the next generation by upgrading your TV, your consoles. Obviously, if you're part of the PC Master Race. And speaking of PC Master Race, we have to welcome Basement Radio Arcade Podcast, Voice of Voices. Enrique, welcome to the show, dude.
It's funny, man. Speaking of PC Master Race, that's great.
Well, I've been holding that in my back pocket, and it just was the perfect time. Well, first of all, thanks for being here, dude. I definitely super appreciate that. Again, this you come in at the perfect timing, because this particular topic is talking about how Microsoft, or more so, has already announced that that the moving forward, or at least at GDC, we're going to get a chance to see Forza Motorsport 8 running on next gen hardware and using ray tracing to its best ability. And as someone who has been very, very blatant about saying that, yes, I enjoy my gaming consoles, but I am a part of this PC master race where you did spend a couple of bucks on upgrading your rig, and that's great, and that's one of the advantages of Microsoft, that they give their players the ability to have Xbox Game Pass. And allow you to play where you want to play. Now, I'm not even talking about Project X Cloud. I'm talking about if you are like yourself and Mooch and Dealer and Colt, who have amazing PCs, and you choose to use it at and run it at 120 frames per second and have all the bells and whistles checked off, you can do that. But it's interesting. The two questions that I asked the panel originally before you got here was, one, are you interested to see how far they take this racing franchise with ray tracing? But more importantly, once this is a perfected craft with this major developer who's a Microsoft first party, how important do you think it's going to be for their other first party studios?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. And I want to say, as a PC gamer, I actually have experienced ray tracing already.
Okay.
Because I have the new NVIDIA RTX cards, which have ray tracing. Yeah, so I played Metro Exodus, which has ray tracing.
That must look gorgeous, dude.
Oh yeah, I mean it's definitely a different experience. But I will say this, like even without, because you definitely take a hit when you turn on ray tracing, like you definitely take a hit to your performance on the PC. And when I mean hit, I mean there's a hit in frame rate. So, but I mean either way, I think it looked good, but I mean it looked like extra good, like with it. I think the best example of ray tracing that I've seen so far in Boom is really the last Call of Duty, man. I mean, that was just, I mean, it looked great on
even
PC.
on the X, it looked impressive, but I can only imagine with a rig running that, it must have looked like breathtaking.
Oh my God. I mean, it was, even without, like I say, without ray tracing, it was great. But with ray tracing on, and when you had particle effects going on, explosions with the ray tracing on, it was like, whoa. Like, yeah, it was just like, I was like, I need to watch that again. And, my understanding is Control is actually one of the games that really is probably the best. I
actually just
game
beat that game prior to starting Death Stranding. It's the second game I beat. It's incredible.
Nice. Yeah. So I'm going to get to that, but I heard you guys talking about Forza, and look, I've always said this. I've always thought Forza is like Microsoft's showpiece when they release new hardware.
Yes.
It just looks great. I mean, I think what we saw with previous Forzas, I mean, I think we're all kind of just blown away, and that's even without ray tracing. And I can only imagine what this game is going to look like with ray tracing. And I fully expect, by the way, I mean, this game to just knock the socks off of people when they see ray tracing incorporated. I think because I mean, it's not a demanding game per se, because you don't have this like massive, open world, multiple NPCs everywhere, right? It's not like a Call of Duty on that scale. You have cars, you have the track, perhaps maybe now an open world. I heard someone say that earlier. But I think it's going to be a showcase piece for ray tracing. And I think people are just going to be like, their jaws are going to drop when they see ray tracing on this particular game on a console for the first time, especially if you haven't experienced it yet. I really think it's gonna wow a lot of people. But I think with the other studios, I would believe that they're going to take advantage of ray tracing. I'm not sure that all games will do that. I think that might be maybe come down to a design choice by each developer. Maybe it's a situation. I don't know if they can do this with the Series X. I would hope they can, because with the PC, you have the option of running ray tracing or turning it off. To boost performance. Like I said, you obviously take a hit, and maybe the console will be so optimized that won't even happen. I don't know, but my guess there'd probably be some kind of performance hit with ray tracing. But my guess would be that maybe the developers will there might be some games that don't have it, but definitely I with Microsoft's bigger AAA games like Gears, which already has some element of ray tracing in it now, Gears 5, like Halo Infinite, Gears 6. Some of their bigger AAA bangers.
Yeah.
And I know you don't like the word bangers, Boom, but
No. I mean, I mean, obviously, I was just being facetious
No,
because
I know, man,
I'm
I
the
know.
old man in the room. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
The grumpy
yeah.
old
Get
man.
off my lawn. No, but I think especially with their AAA games, you're definitely going to see them incorporate, the ray tracing technology. And I think I'm tired. People are going to be wild by this. It's definitely an exciting technology. Like I said, I've seen it. And I kind of want to piggyback to Forts. I think I heard you guys talking about the 120 frames a second.
Yeah.
I don't know. See, here's the thing. Like a lot of people have TVs that wouldn't be able to take advantage of the 120 frames a second.
Yes, that's
right?
correct.
And so I wonder if it is 100. I wonder if it's going to have like a performance mode, like you're going to have like higher resolution, like 60 frames a second, and then maybe have something like 120 frames per second. So that way people have the option, whether you're playing it on a PC monitor, my PC monitors, I have a 144 megahertz monitor, so I can go up to as high as 144 frames per second. Yeah, it's dude. I'm telling Boom. For me, my PC's been my next gen experience. But I'll get on my soapbox about PC. But
nothing wrong with that. Listen, you know what? You wanted it, you did it, and you can't argue that.
Yeah, it's just like Plague's Tale. Like, oh my god, I'm playing that on my PC. Wow. I mean, just wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard people talking about it looking great on console. I mean, I'm just blown away on PC. But I wonder, like with Forza, if they'll have something like that where you can, because not everyone's going to have the ability to run the game at 120 frames per second, depending on what kind of monitor they have or TV they have. So I wonder if they'll have like the ability to kind of either go 120 or 60 frames a second. But look, this is going to be a big leap from this is going to be a bigger generational leap, I think, from a visual standpoint than we had from last generation going into this generation. I've heard from people that are working on next generation games that guys, you don't have to worry about power with either one of these consoles. People are going to be blown away by how.
I mean, you saw that report from EA, right? EA was already saying that you guys are going to have your heads exploded open.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I heard that before that report came out. Like, talking to someone who's actually working on a PS5 launch title, I was like, hey, people are going to be blown away by what these consoles can do. So it's an exciting time, man. Like I'm looking forward to it, man, because I really do feel like this wasn't as big a leap from last generation to this generation as it was like going from the OG Xbox to like the 360 and the PS2 to the PlayStation 3.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, it's a great time to be a gamer, especially if you're someone like a lot of people on this panel that support multiple consoles. I mean, I'm very, very, very happy supporting the PS whatever, the Xbox whatever, and the current Nintendo Switch. And I think it opens it hurts my wallet a little bit for sure, but at the same time, I'm not locked down to one particular brand. Where I have to play games on just there and miss out on so many others. So again, I can't. I'm not going to say that it's feasible for everybody financially, because it's certainly not. But if you are someone that loves gaming, if this is your pastime, see, for me, this is it. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I've never done drugs. I don't go to titty bars or anything like stupid like that. No, I'm boring. But I like my movies. I like hanging out with my wife, and I love gaming, and that's where my monies go, and that's why I can afford to do this, because I don't take on other
hallelujah
other responsibilities.
This is your vice, Boom.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's it.
I mean,
It's always been my vice. Like I said, everyone knows that I'm a retired New York City police officer for 21 years, and with the stigmatism with police, or cops as some people like to call them, they kind of like to drink, and that's never been my thing. My thing was being ostracized by my peers for taking a week off for Resident Evil 2 when it released on the Japanese version for the PlayStation 1. So yeah, that's what I dealt with, but it was okay because I didn't give a flying F, you know what I mean? But I want to move on to the next topic, and this is an exciting one for me personally, because we're going to be talking about Senua Saga Hellblade 2. And I want to bring up the banner that's going to accompany this particular topic. And as we know, we have some new and exciting information regarding the development of Senua Saga Hellblade 2. And I pulled this story from Windows Central, one of my favorite places to pull information from because they're not clickbaity. I happen to know Jez Corden personally, and I do like his reporting. Even though he gets a lot of shit when he says, what's on his chest, and you know what, you can't argue. The guy is as transparent as they come, and I enjoy his opinions on the Xbox 2 podcast, which will be on, I think, later this afternoon on Rand's channel. But as it's been reported, is Senua Saga Hellblade 2 is in early development, and I'm going to say this right now: I am probably 1,000% wrong, and I don't give an F. And I'm going to call it right now so you could say, boom, said it first. And I've said it before, but I'm going to say it again. I believe that Ninja Theory's next romp into psychosis is going to be a launch title for the Series X. I really, in my gizzard, believe that. Now, could I be wrong? Am I wrong? Probably. But the narrative is what the information that we got regarding the narrative is very, very interesting in the direction they're going to be focusing on. And they're going to be like really diving deep into myths, gods, and of course, religion, which is very, think about this for a second. They're going to be touching on, when Hellblade 1 came out, it touched on psychosis. And like many things in this world, when it gets too real for people, they shy away from dealing with something. And, again, if you have not played Hellblade, I say shame on you. But if you have not played Hellblade, I say go and get yourself an incredible pair of gaming headphones, because the experience wearing those headphones and not playing with them are literally night and day. And it is, they took on a subject that a lot of people shy away from, and they're going in even deeper. Now, as it's been reported, they're saying that Hellblade 2 is in early development. But according to my theory, they've been working on this game for over 2 years. And if you add those 2 years to another year of development time before the launch of the Xbox Series X in either October, November, or December, whenever in the fall it launches, they could have logistically 3 full years under their belt. And obviously, new information comes to us from a developer diary, and this comes to us from creative director and Ninja Theory co-founder Tamim Antodis, and he shared a bit of more insight into the game. And it's going to be made by a team that's twice as large as the original one. Now, again, when you say that out loud, I laugh. I laugh because we know that the original Hellblade was made between 15 and 20 people. So when you say it's been doubled, boom, get the party hats. It's pretty impressive what they did with just 15 to 20 people on the first one and what we've already seen. So just because you're here a little bit late, and just in case you have to jump out early, I want to go to Enrique first on this. Again, when you talk about Ninja Theory, for me personally, their history as a developer is one that just screams one hit after another. Quality, quality, quality. And Hellblade is another exclamation point or diamond in the crown, right? Hellblade 2, what we've seen running in game, quote unquote, has me very excited for what the Series X is going to do. For you personally, knowing the development team behind this game and knowing how important the talking about psychosis is to the team, are you excited to see where they take Senua Saga Hellblade 2?
Yeah. I don't know if I'll play it though, because I think the game. I don't do scary games, by the way.
Okay. So you're like Zemi. Zemi doesn't play scary games either.
Yeah, high five, buddy. High five.
Yeah, you're right. You have to play that game with a good pair of headsets on, because you won't get the full effect of it. And even then, with hearing voices, I'm not down with that. I'm sorry.
It really, like I said, yeah. Someone had wrote to me in a DM, and I, my God, I'm so terrible with names. They said, "Boom, I see you online. You're playing Hellblade. Are you using headphones?" And I said, "No." They said, "Boom, I'm telling you, it's going to change your life." And when I
absolutely
listened to it, I said, this is an entirely different experience.
Absolutely.
Like you, as if you're playing this in the dark and you're really invested in the story, you are looking over your shoulder because someone is talking in your right or left ear. It is creepy.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you insight into somebody who, because it's a real mental illness. People that hear voices, and so it throws you into that mind. It really throws you into the mind of the character. I think that's probably, I mean, outside of the game visually looking appealing, I think that one of the things that's genius about that game is that it really, in terms of immersion, it just really immerses you into the mind of what this character is going through.
Yes.
And so you, I mean, and I don't know that there's many games that I can say that have really immersed me that way. I mean, I can tell you that I was like, I can't play this because one, I just it bugs me out. Like I think it's Zemi who doesn't play scary games. Like I just can't.
He will not play them unless it's multiplayer.
Yeah, there's some games I can play, like Resident Evil I can do, right? But like, games with what is it? What's the one with like the satanic cult or something?
That was the one on the PlayStation that came eventually to multiple plats. What do we had to wear the night vision goggles?
Yeah, and like there's like people like
Outlast?
yes.
Yes.
I don't do that.
No, that's too much.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a difference between Hellblade and Outlast is straight up gory and disgusting. Like,
yes, this is true.
I cannot stand that game.
but for me, it's this game is more of a like psychological thriller, and like just hearing those voices and I know why they did it, because obviously they wanted to immerse you with I'm thinking about work right now, what the client now I'm thinking about work too, what the character's going through, and so and I think with that trailer that I saw. And I don't know what she's speaking in tongue. I mean, I don't know what's going on.
She is definitely chanting something.
Something.
Yeah, I mean, you have to ask yourself: are those Vikings that are around her? Are they real? Did she come across?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, are they okay? So is she seeing this, or is this real? Like, I mean, like my guess is that this is going on in her head, right?
Yes.
And but I will say this: like Ninja Theory is definitely, I think, from a genre perspective, like if we think about like the horror genre or maybe genres that maybe fall into that like psychological thriller category, they're taking things, I think, in a different direction that I can't remember any developer doing. Like we talk about like characters that maybe have mental health. I haven't seen a developer, and I could be wrong, really kind of capitalize on that and create an immersive experience like that gives you kind of insight into that mindset. And I think from a creative standpoint, it is phenomenal. Like what they're doing, like the last the game they're working on now, Project
Mara, Project Mara.
And
that's another one. I mean, first of all, it looks. We actually talked about that. Stag Grillen brought that up about how you can't even really tell the difference between them sitting on the stairs and the actual rendered stairs. But could you imagine a
ray tracing
like game ray tracing like that?
Yeah,
you're gonna shit your pants.
Yeah, and you know what? It's like everyone's like, well, why they use the same character from Hellblade with
they didn't finish telling her story.
But you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking like, well, maybe this is like who she is in real life, and then in her mind, she's the other character,
maybe
from Hellblade. You know what I mean?
That's a fantastic theory.
Like maybe in her mind, she is, she's, that in her mind, Hellblade's happening, right? And then Project Mars like her in real life. if that makes any sense,
it actually does. Listen, you just don't know. But I am going to say this: kudos. And a big golf clap to Ninja Theory for not shying away from a subject that in this country, as someone in law enforcement for 20 plus years who dealt with mental illness almost on a regular basis. Now, obviously, I don't have a PhD. I can't to tell you what someone's illness is, but because you deal with it on a daily basis and you don't know what the next call is going to entail. I mean, I've come across people suffering from psychosis, people suffering from delusions and voices, and it is really amazing that a developer, more so Microsoft, allowing their newly formed or newly addition to their Microsoft Game Studios to continue with these passion projects, taking on a subject that normally people just do not want to talk about.
Yeah, and you know what's great about them, Boom? If I'm not mistaken, I believe they actually, with some of the the money that they got from Hellblade,
they donated,
donated, to mental health. So I mean, that's that's awesome. And I would agree with you 110%. I think there's that's the one. I don't know. Maybe it's taboo to talk about, in society today, but I think it's something that just that flies a little bit under the radar. I mean, obviously, there's been, I think, more awareness of mental health more recently.
Yes.
But I think it's something that needs to be talked about more often. I mean, I don't think, and look, like you said, Boom, you've seen it in real life. I've seen it, in my own life and working, when I used to work in DC, you would see people walking around. There's homeless people that have mental health issues. That's well documented. You would see that, they'd be having fights, with people and conversations in the street, and no one was there. So these are real life things. And you talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. We see that with some of our veterans that have come back home from combat. I mean, it's a real thing. And look, I see it in the community sometimes. I mean, there's certain things that people say, and I'm like, and
yes.
well,
as a content creator, because we work with the public, so to speak, that we're constantly interacting with people. Like a good friend of actually a founding member of this particular show, and I'm only bringing it up because normally when someone can't be here for personal reasons, it's I respect people's privacy, but because he has asked me to publicly speak about it, the Welsh gamer suffers from depression. And he's been away from the show for several weeks. And if you remember, in early 2019, he was gone for almost 3 months, and that's because he fell into a really wicked depression. I consider the Welsh gamer as a brother, so I would check on him daily, and he's probably listening right now. But depression is real, folks, and he himself has put himself out there, but more so than that, he has also put out his hand, and he has had numerous people reach out to him in the DM and say, listen, let's hash this out. What's going on with you? And he has, from what I understand, actually spoken to people off the ledge. So if you are listening, Welsh, we wish you well. We miss you dearly. You are my brother, and I do love you. And if anyone that wants to reach out to him in a DM, reach out to him. Let him know that you're thinking about him, that you miss him. Tell him that maybe he just needs someone to speak to. But depression is real, and it's as real as this show.
It is, and anyone can have it. Like anyone can go through depression at any point in their life. I've had it happen to me in my life. And I can't imagine what it's like to deal with it on a daily basis. And the one thing I'll say this, Boom, and then I'll pass the mic. Joe Biden said something a couple weeks ago that really didn't sit well with me about the gaming industry. I think we've all probably heard that comment. And I'm going to paraphrase here. I think, Boom, he said something to the effect that, what is it? Game developers teach people how to be violent or something.
Exactly. It's the most preposterous comment from someone that's in office that's supposed to be representing the people. They
like to circulate that every 5 years. It seems
it's definitely half cocked for sure.
And then you have a developer who's making games and actually openly talking about mental health, right? The issues of mental health. The developer's been very upfront about bringing that subject matter to the light, right? But none of that's talked about,
right?
Except for the fact that apparently developers make games that teach people how to be violent. So, that's very unfortunate, and it's obviously not true. And I bring that up again because you have a developer like Ninja Theory, who is bringing this subject to the forefront, and I think that's just a great thing. I think it's a great thing for the industry. It's a great thing for the community as well. So.
Well, listen, thank you so much for your point. I really super appreciate it because what you had to say was super important, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to share something personal that's going on with one of our members, and hopefully the community responds in kind to the Welsh gamer. Stagrill, I want to get to you because obviously, I mean, we don't want to bring the show to a screeching halt, but you can't shy away from mental illness. But in regards to Hellblade 2's development team doubling in size, I mean, we saw what they did with 15 people, right? We saw an early trailer of an in-game engine of what appears to be really stepping up the graphics prowess. We've seen it's been brought to our attention on what they're going to cover regarding religion and all kinds of other things that were spoken upon about in the original but never really touched on, and this is going to take it to another level. For you personally, are you excited to see what Ninja Theory does with double the amount of help to make this next game?
I mean, yeah, I'm excited. definitely. I mean, I think they did a great job on the first one, visually and storytelling wise. And I'm also of the ilk of like, more doesn't always make things better.
Right.
But I don't think that's going to hurt them in this case. They have a very strong vision and foundation of what they want to do with the content they create. And like I said earlier, having more money. Sorry, the chat just made me laugh about my chair. More foundation for, doing what they want to do and having a bigger crew and still keeping it relatively small, I think was a good idea. I mean, yeah, they doubled in size, but they didn't go to 200 people. I mean, then you could just get a lot of cooks in the kitchen, you can say.
Yes, I agree. Too many cooks could definitely spoil.
Yeah, I like that they're it just seems like they really want to stick to their vision and they want to stay smallish, which is, good because then not too many cooks in the kitchen type of deal. I really do like when I heard so I'm probably going to upset some people here and whatever. I am a very vocal atheist. But when they said we are going to touch on myths, gods, and religion, I'm like, oh, sweet. You're going to talk about the same three things. They all, to me, all religion is mythology, so it just and how it fits into like how the mental health aspect fits into religious, at some religion and aspects of how people, it can mess with their we've all seen the videos of those crazy ass people at Walmart yelling at you that you need to find Jesus, and then
right.
And you go to a sporting event and there's people yelling at you on megaphones that you're a sinner because you're going to a football game, and it's all I'm not saying religion is entirely bad, but like I'm curious to see how they work in the whole myth, gods and religion into the psychosis and mental health aspect of their storytelling, because to me I feel like there's a lot of correlation, and that's a big reason why I am who I am today in my beliefs. Because atheists like to say being an atheist isn't have a belief system, but it is. You believe that isn't what it is, and that's fine. We all can believe what we want, but
right.
I'm excited for that. I still haven't finished the original Hellblade. I got about halfway through, and then just like some of the puzzles were just like pissing me off, and backlog life. But I love the fact, like I said previously, that it's going to be a small team still. Like they doubled in size, but that's, if you talk to people, 45 to 60 people isn't a big team, right?
No.
That's still small. So I think creating what's probably going to be a AAA experience. I still think that the original Hellblade, even though they were an independent developer, which throws them under indie, is a AAA experience, and this new game will be a AAA experience. So I don't think size of a team denotes AAA, AA, single A. You know what I mean?
No, I definitely agree with you. I think that there's certainly again. I don't think that a team is set into a cookie cutter definition. I think that you can have a AAA experience without having the AAA supposed quote unquote characteristics on what it's defined in the industry by the I guess the IGNs of the world and the Kotakus of the world that have this ideology that in order for it to be considered a AAA game, it needs to have X, Y, and Z. And I think that a team like Ninja Theory is proving that you can have a AAA experience with what's considered an indie development cycle. But Zemi Games, I want to go to you next on this, because according to I'm going to butcher this name, and hopefully I don't. Anto Niades, who is also a part of the development team at Ninja Theory, they shared some pretty interesting information where they're going to be giving people a personal insight actually into psychosis. And the sequel is meant to build upon that and show the madness and suffering that shapes myths, gods, and religions. And you can take a look at the Dreadnought Diary, where Tamim has shared this information. For you personally, I know obviously it's considered to you a scary game, but it is a game that does touch on real life scenarios, and I think that the way Ninja Theory has done it, where they have incorporated a game with real life, and they walk a very fine line on how not to make fun or poke fun at one or the other is pretty impressive. Are you excited for Hellblade 2?
Yeah, I mean, I am, and I haven't even played the first one. I don't even know if I will actually ever play the game, but I am excited for it because, I mean, it just sounds like it's going to have an absolutely fantastic story, and I love that, the direction that they're taking it and explain, and kind of somewhat, in a way, I guess, explaining how, myths, legends, and religions can somewhat be created or altered or imagined or whatever it may be, whatever your word may be, by people who suffer from psychosis, mental illness, right? And I think that's like an absolutely interesting and fantastic approach for the second game, and I really want to play it. But I mean, man, I'm telling you, after I'm seeing these images you're popping up, like that one picture where she's standing in front of the tree with all the people hanging from it, looking like it's like a puppet show. Man, that is creepy. Like, I don't know if I'll be able to play that. And then, before we actually got onto this topic, I was really like heavily contemplating downloading Hellblade again. I've actually downloaded it twice and deleted it twice. But I was really thinking about like downloading it, giving it a go, and then you guys started talking about the game and like the whispers
I gotta
in the
be honest with you.
ear.
I think that if you could take a Plague's Tale, you could probably take this game too. Just don't wear it with the headphones. Just play it with the sound regular. You won't get that otherworldly experience where people are talking into your right ear and you're like, whoa, wait a second, it's dark, someone just talked to my ear and I got to use the bathroom. You know what I'm saying? I think if you just play it as a game, you might be able to power through it.
Yeah, I know, and I really need to try it at least, right? I mean, I've tried a lot of scary games before and just like immediately like turned away and shut off the console and then restarted the console, So I don't know. I really do want to try it because it is a storyline that I am super into. Like every single aspect of Hellblade, from like a story approach, from gameplay, I'm like really into. It's just the creepiness of it that is steering me away. Like Project Mara, like that game, I think really looks absolutely incredible. I'm sure it's going to have a fantastic story, and I'm really interested in playing it. But I'm telling you, I don't do well with scary games. Like I really don't. So I don't know, but I'm super impressed.
I think you should give it the old college effort.
Yeah, well, maybe if nothing else, maybe I can profit off of it if I stream, right?
Yes, possibly. You'll have people there cheering you on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But I'm super impressed with what Ninja Theory is doing. I'm not really the biggest fan of Bleeding Edge, but Hellblade, the first one looks amazing. The second one, just from the in-game or in-engine footage that we saw, looks absolutely fantastic. The story sounds amazing, and they're just a super talented team. And it still blows my mind that a studio so small as like 15-20 people can make a game that would take a studio with 200 people probably the same amount of time to do, right? It just blows my mind the amount of talent that this studio has. And if it was any other studio trying to make this game with like 40 people or trying to make Hellblade the first one with 15-20 people, I don't know if I would believe that they would be able to do it. But Ninja Theory's already pulled it off once, so I'm sure they'll do it again, and I can't wait to see what they come out with.
Well, yeah, thank you so much. And great points, really great points. And I really want you to give it a go. It's not terrible. It's just a great story. And I think you would enjoy it. Yes, it has some scary aspects to it, but it's also an action game where you are doing some sword fighting. So I think that might be enough for you to move it past like a horror title per se. But I want to get to Hyena Den. But before I do, I have to thank JD Gamer. Now, JD, I apologize for passing on this super chat. I am definitely running it on molasses today. He drops a $5 super chat, and he says this: Turn 10, talking about the subject, before this one, said that there would be major changes to the series in the new game. I'm wondering if they're adding a story mode, something to make more to make it more appealing to the casuals. That is a great. I never even thought about that, dude. That is a fantastic point. It would definitely be interesting. But Hyena Den, I want to get to you closing out not only this particular topic, but today's unbelievable show. And like I said, considering that I'm fighting the flu and I feel absolutely terrible, I could not miss today's show. And I'm actually, every time I talk outside of the couple times I sound like Barry White, I got energized each time. And that's when you saw me, I muted the mic. It's because I had to power back up with some juice or something. But the current team size at Ninja Theory, as we know, is 120 plus developers, and they're working on multiple projects. I believe they're currently working on 3 or 4, if you count the one that's focusing on actual information concerning psychosis. So it's not a game per se, but it is something they're working on. You have multiple projects. You have a team of 120 people that seem to just continually impress. It's Bleeding Edge, obviously Project Mara and Hellblade 2 are all going to be, depending on what you like and what you don't like, they're all going to be high quality titles. Even like Bleeding Edge, for instance, a lot of people are underselling that game because it's maybe not their type of game, but it is my type because I grew up in the Dreamcast era where Power Stone 1 and 2 for Capcom was incredible, and it does give me that feel. So I'm looking forward to playing that. But for you personally, how impressed are you with this size, the size and scope of this team and the way projects are broken down to what seemingly is considered indie development, but bringing out AAA quality titles?
I've always said that Ninja Theory is probably one of the most talented studios Microsoft has. I think outside of my personal bias with Turn 10, so I always keep them out of that discussion. It would always go Ninja Theory, or sorry, Playground Games, Ninja Theory, and then Obsidian. They're all very talented, but Ninja Theory, I think, more so is in ways that the others aren't because of how small they actually are. And now we're hearing obviously that the team has doubled in size for Hellblade. It's so staggering to see where that studio's come from all the way back in the early 2000s with what was the game called, Kung Fu Chaos on the original Xbox, all the way up to...
Could you imagine that game was made by Ninja Theory? Yeah, go figure.
No.
A lot of people love that game.
I loved playing that game with my friend way back when, but it really is amazing to see this studio grow in what they're doing and some of the stuff that they're tackling that other people won't. Going on to that discussion, actually, it's interesting because I think I don't know if anybody here watches the Easy Allies podcast, but they brought this topic up themselves, and I thought it was actually interesting to hear. But with Ninja Theory tackling stuff about psychosis and mental illness, it is a line to walk for them specifically now that they're in the position under Microsoft, because if you look at it with what they did with the first Hellblade game as an independent developer, I don't know if they had backing or not by PlayStation. I don't think they did. I think it was just a timed exclusive, obviously. But they're indie then releasing Hellblade, a game, Mental Psychosis. That's in the eyes of the media, that's something that is revered, because it's like, oh, well, you're doing something really well. But the point that Easy Allies brought up is now that they're under Microsoft and still tackling the subject, it might be looked at in a different way, that because they're under this big multi-conglomerate, where it's not, it could be misconstrued as not being about seriously tackling what the topic that they're trying to tackle, and it might be misconstrued as, well, now they're trying to make a buck off of it, and it's being turned into entertainment, and obviously they're not saying that that's what they're actually doing, but some might take it differently now that they're under a really big publisher compared to where they were when they first launched Hellblade. Well, do I look at them like that? No, I think they're genuine, as they were when they first released the first game. So I think that their intents are very serious. It's just that it's going to be interesting to see how they walk that line with Hellblade and Project Mara, because, like I said, some people are very skittish of the topic that is mental illness.
Yes.
And it's perceived in multimedia in general, not just video games, but movies, music. Like it depends on how it's tackled, and if it's done wrong, you will definitely see outrage for that. If it's done right, then obviously people still sing the same praises one launched. But I think Ninja Theory could do so much with IPs too. Like I'm very excited for Hellblade 2, Senua Saga. I completed Hellblade 1. I loved that game. Very, very, very amazing and emotional. I see them. So after obviously Hellblade 2 is done, after Bleeding Edge is done, which it's near, after all that stuff's done, I'm very interested to see if one of their teams ends up tackling that project. I remember it was last year that this it was before E3, and where everybody was speculating on what Ninja Theory team was working on, and it was that that game on their website from like 4 or 5 years ago. It was like a melee sci-fi sort of game.
Yes.
I don't know if anybody remembers it, but
Yes.
I remember Rand made a video on it, and a lot of others did too. I would try and tackle that game again and make it into this like almost like this space odyssey, like I call it, but the pre-production of what that was seemed really, really interesting. And after all of these games have come and went, good, bad, whatever the reception is, I would love to see them move on to what that game was and see if they can make something out of it.
Well,
But
it would be a new IP,
regardless-
and that's exactly what Microsoft is looking for. And this is what we're all looking for too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Regardless, though, I think Hellblade 2's I think is going to be really, really amazing. I cannot wait for this. It's probably still be, but it is what it is. I have recently become a fan of Ninja Theory, and what they put out. I'm definitely going to be trying Bleeding Edge and see if I like it or not. I have no idea. And then obviously Hellblade 2 and whatever else they work on. And Project Mara too. Project Mara, I think, is the one that I'm most interested in, because it kind of seems like it's one of those games, like, I don't know if anybody's played Soma on whether it's on PlayStation or Xbox. That was a psychological thriller as well. And Soma was just a mind warp of a game. Like, it's just crazy. But Project Mara seems to kind of take some game, and I definitely want to see more of that. So it's going to be interesting.
Well, listen, this has been an amazing show, and obviously we went past the 2-hour mark because obviously we got a couple extra people in the panel, and obviously this is normally a three-man team, but you know what? Getting other people to get on this show is something that we're going to be striving for moving forward. And of course, if you're interested in joining the conversation and you have somewhat of a decent podcasting experience, or even if you've never podcasted but you have the will and the want to jump on an Xbox show, and you're not going to be combative, and you're not going to use cursing, because this is a PG-13 show. I like to try to keep it that way. Curse word, we're all adults, but we don't want tangents where it's 5 minutes of F-bombs. It just wouldn't sit well with me, because I think you can get your point across without using foul language, but it comes out and it's perfectly acceptable. Hit me up in a DM. We'll talk. We'll find out what your connection is to the community, because that's the thing. I've been approached by numerous people wanting to get on the show, and one of my biggest of vetting process, if you will, is how they interact with the community. And you have to be a pro community member, because if you're not, then you're not getting on my shows. And I'm not being disrespectful in any way. I'm saying that because I have a responsibility to this amazing audience that we had nearly 300 people watching today live, to make sure that people coming on are going to be respectful and be interesting to listen to, but also have different opinions. So if you are a guy or gal and you're interested in guest appearing on any of the shows that I do, which of course is Primetime Gaming on Mondays, Breakfast with Boom on Fridays, except tomorrow, and of course the Xbox Factor podcast on Thursdays, hit me up in a DM. We will talk and we will try and make that happen. But let me get to the outros. And you know what? I want to go to, of course, Enrique from the Basement Radio Arcade podcast, because Enrique, you were nice enough to join us from work. Even though you work at home, you're still taking time from what pays the bills, and I certainly appreciate you being here. If you missed last night's Basement Radio Arcade podcast, it was phenomenal. I was listening to it this morning, and I fell asleep listening to it, so I had to rewind it because like I said, I took some NyQuil, and I just
bored you that bad, Boom?
No, not boring.
No, I'm just kidding, man.
I am, like I said, I'm hanging on to try to finish this show, but
I'm gonna blame Mooch.
But yeah, Mooch was on. Of course, the regular panel of B Money was there. We had Slow Mo Backslap. We had, of course, Gaming Forte. I don't know if anyone else showed up afterwards, but it was a great show, great conversation.
Thank you.
Big opinions on Stadia, big opinions on Rod Ferguson leaving and what that means. And please get over there and give them a like, give them a follow. And Enrique, do me a favor, tell everyone where they can subscribe to this outstanding YouTube channel, but more importantly, talk to you on social media through Twitter.
Absolutely. I just want to say something, Boom, real quick, man. I hope you feel better, man. That flu is no
thanks,
joke.
Dude.
Yeah, I tell you, man, you have some stones, my friend. I probably would have canceled the show. I would have been like, you know what, I don't feel good. No, but that's awesome, man. Really appreciate you doing that for the community and being under.
Well, you know what it is? I have just as much fun as the people listening.
Yeah,
I really do. And I write these shows from their point of view, from a fan's point of view. Every show that I produce is original content. Sure, I use articles, but the wording, as you can tell, and you've been a part of my show notes, they're ridiculous.
Yeah,
and they're all original thoughts. And I tackle these topics from a fan's point of view because I want to have just as much fun as the guy or gal at the end of whatever they're watching this on. So I felt terrible Monday. I didn't say anything, and then obviously I was getting worse. And I had written Thursday's show, and you're normally at a couple times a week I'm up past midnight writing, and I've actually given up playing games to write because it's important to me to produce quality content for this incredible community. And in turn, just did not have it in me to write the show for tomorrow. Though I did start writing the show, believe it or not, even though because I couldn't sleep last night because I was uncomfortable, I stayed up and I wrote a little bit for Monday's show. So that's going to be a big one. But thanks again for being here, dude.
No, absolutely, man. Again, my pleasure. Anytime if I could make it, man, I'll hop on and and talk video games with you, man. So definitely appreciate the invite as always, man. And we got to get you back on Brap. I know you were on a rant that we had last weekend, but we got to get you back on the regular Brap. So you could find Basement Radio Arcade Podcast on YouTube. Just go to Basement Radio Arcade Podcast, type that in, you'll find us. We go live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you want to follow me on Twitter and talk some video games, you can find me on the Twitters at BRAP, BRAP _podcast. So thank you again, Boom, man. Appreciate it.
Yes. Well, listen, definitely great having you on. Great talking games with you. And it's going to be even better meeting for the first time in real life.
Oh, yeah.
Out during E3. Like I said, you're going to see how much work goes into putting 40 plus pieces of content out on a 7-day span. And I'm trying to double that with 80. And I know I'm going to put myself into a coffin potentially, but I'm going to do it for this community because I love them so much. But thanks for being here. Stagorilla, first of all, thanks so much for coming back. Really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with 2+ hours on today's Xbox Factor podcast. I hope you had just as much fun as the original time you were here a couple weeks ago. Do me a favor, dude. Tell everyone where they can follow you on Twitter, but more importantly, check out your streaming.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me back. It was great being here. I always love giving my non-factual opinions on things. I'm just playing. Yeah, you can catch me on Twitch, Staggerilla, and you can also catch me on Twitter as Staggerilla. And then I'm doing a little more Mixer again in the evenings. Just I've been doing some, I don't want to say music creation, but whatever. It's electronic bullshit. I've been doing that again on late night Mixer stuff, and I've been diving back into PlayStation games, and I've been showcasing those a little bit more on the Mixer platform. Just recently installed Death Stranding and God of War, and I'm going to dive into those pretty soon. So you can check me out on any of those platforms.
Well, listen, definitely appreciate you being here. I know there's some people, a good friend of the show, Goth Witch Girl. Thank you so much for being here. She's asking what happened to the Scalebound. I have to retitle the show because Scalebound was going to be a big topic, but because the panel ballooned to 5 people, we just didn't get around to it. So I'm going to use that originally written topic and all the information I found on Scalebound for Monday evening's primetime gaming. So tune in to hear our opinion on what Scalebound means for Microsoft, Platinum Games, and what they're going to do with the franchise moving forward. But of course, I have to thank Zemi. Zemi, first of all, thanks for being here, dude. Really super appreciate you being a part of the show each and every week. It's something I look forward to, and I'm glad that you are part of a show that you enjoy because obviously you are an Xbox dude through and through. Do me a favor, man. Tell everyone where they can check out your incredible YouTube channel, but more importantly, hit you up and give you some likes and follows on Twitter.
Well, thank you so much, Boom. It's always a pleasure being on this show. I absolutely love it. I love talking about Xbox and everything around it. So, I still appreciate you letting me come on this show every single week. And so thank you so much for that. Also, if you guys enjoyed my opinions about any of the topics today, make sure to check out my YouTube channel. It's called Zimmy Games. I do a bunch of gaming news, game reviews, just a ton of gaming content over there. And then you can also find me on Twitter at Zimmy Games. I'm trying to become a little bit more active on there. Here, like the last week, I've gotten a lot more active. I've
been seeing you pop up in my timeline. So good on you for that.
Yeah, well, I finally actually hit 600 followers, I think. So that's pretty great.
Dude. Yeah,
I know. I'm moving up in the world, right?
Yes.
But yeah, so if you once again, if you like my opinions, or even if you didn't, make sure to follow me on Twitter so you can see all the new things I'm doing. I also have my DMs always open. So if you want to send me a message, talk about some games, or maybe if you disagreed with what I was saying or something like that, send me a DM. We can talk about it. I can learn more from you. You can learn more from me. It'd be great. We can both walk away knowing more about the industry and gaming as a whole. But yeah, as always, thank you so much, Boom, and thank you so much to the panel and the guests as well.
Well, thanks again. Appreciate you being here. And of course, last but certainly not least, Hyena Den, first of all, it's always great to work with you. And I was really stoked to have you on this particular show simply because a lot of the topics had got you excited, and that gets me excited as a producer of original content. And of course, being our resident go-to guy when it comes to Forza and everything about it, having you on to talk about what's going to be coming in the future for the franchise was super, super important. And I'm glad that you knocked it out of the park like I expected. Do me a favor, dude. Tell everyone where they can check out your YouTube channel and, of course, follow you on Twitter.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure being on once again. Amazing topics, amazing panel, amazing guests. Everybody can find me on Twitter at HyenaDenXBL, no spaces, and on YouTube at HyenaSpaceDen, HyenaSpaceDen as well. He wants to play some games. I'm currently going through some Wolfenstein 2. I'm going to be downloading Wolfenstein Youngblood as well, despite the poor reception, because I just want to try it out and see what it is for myself. And yeah.
Well, then, again, thanks for being here. Certainly hit everybody up. Everyone's information is available in, of course, the show notes. Once this gets loaded up onto YouTube, you can get it and click everybody, including xboxgamerpicks.com, where it's your one-stop place to get original artwork from one of the community's finest in the graphic god. So hit him up, tell him that Boom sent you, and get that original piece of artwork for a very decent price. Everyone, I want to wish you amazing weekend, because obviously I normally do that on Fridays, but because there's no show, I am going to be putting out some a tweet later on. If you do see that tweet, do me a favor and just retweet it and favor it. Let people know. Let other fans of the shows know that there's not going to be a Breakfast with Boom due to illness, but I'll be breaking that out very shortly. Once again, thanks everybody for being here. Thank you for the outstanding generosity once again, and we will see you next week on the newest episode of the Xbox Factor podcast. Take care, everyone.